and ever-changing views, and computer terminology, Commodore news. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you.
Hello, and welcome to episode 88 of Zapped to the Past. I am Adrian Mills, and I am joined, as always, by Mr. Graham Raddings. If you haven't listened before, this is a podcast where we discuss games that were released for the Commodore 64. Last week, we looked at our first batch of games from issue 37 of Zap 64, which we are in no way affiliated with, and were chilled by Chernobyl, pedalled in silence in Professional BMX Simulator, and had our time wasted by Time Fighter. This week, we continue our look at the games in May 1988, along with what was also going on in UK albums that month. So, Graham, inform us of the order of events for this week.
In this delicious sticky toffee pudding of an episode, we grab our 8-bit katanas and munch on a carrot as we head into the super polite walking world of the Rabbit Ronin in Samurai Warrior, the battles of Usagi Yojimbo. We grab our 6-shooters and head north in the Wild West on a crappy rooting-tooting rampage with the grisly GunSmoke. Explore the badly blended demo code routines and multiplexer vomiting of the shoot-it-all-nonsense rubbish UCM, and dive into our always yellow flying machine in the too-simple low-altitude stroboscopic aeroplane racer, Geebee Air Rally. As if that pudding needed more custard. Fancy a game of hearts or blackjack or Texas Hold'em? No? Well, I don't care anyway because Margaret Thatcher does. For some reason. That's right. We shuffle our hands and get our 8-bit gamble on in this single-player world of the Card Sharks. We also explore some more mud-filled caves in the dreary Boulder Dash D-make nonsense of Rockford. Take to the skies again. Well, more like 10 feet from the ground, in a techie but confused ATF, before finally slipping into our best 8-bit Farrah flares and sneaking into the underground Geldra HQ on a daring rescue mission in the rainbow-hooded Rolling Thunder. My advice to you is don't eat all that tasty goodness in one go. Save some of that deliciousness for later.
All right, okay.
Excellent.
I hope what you just said was on the money. I'm sure it always is.
Yes, it's as fitting as it's ever been.
It's just straight down the line. It's been a crazy week. It's crazy weather outside at the moment as well. It's like winter has arrived.
Stupid weather.
Yeah.
Stupid. I hate it.
It took me an hour and a half to get to work this morning.
Well, we can't have ordinary rain anymore, can we? Like, just, when we used to get, just rain. Now, it's torrential rain, downpour, crazy rain. Crazy rain all the time, crazy rain. I don't like it.
Yeah, for like 5-10 minutes and just stops. It's like, you've had your rain. Here's all the rain for the week.
Yeah, it just plays havoc with the drains here until I get them fixed. It's just nothing but leaky drains.
Oh, you got problems with your drains, love?
Yes, I have. Drippy, annoying drains. Is there anything more annoying than the drippy? Oh, there's a lot more annoying, actually, but not when you're trying to concentrate on things in a house that's quiet.
Or go to sleep and you just hear that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know
if only it was that quiet. So it's like I've got bloody Buddy Rich outside doing a bloody drum solo with all the bloody holes in the gutters we've got.
Using Karen Carpenter as sticks.
Shame on you.
I went there. I'm very sorry. Just a recurring gag from a few weeks back, but there you go. There you go.
She'd have laughed her head off if she was alive.
Bonk.
She would. Honestly, she would have drum-filled herself to glee. So.
What, the crap TV show?
She'd have been good in Glee.
She would have been. I'm going to put it here, so just if you are still listening, if you wish to support this podcast with this scintillating chat, you can do that through financial means. If you wish to sign up to our Patreon, you can go over to patreon.com/zapped to the past. There are 2 tiers. There is the give us a quid tier, which is just give us a quid. You can't butter it up. I'm fed up of buttering that one up. It's just give us a quid. We appreciate it. Of course, we appreciate it. It's ace if you do that. And it just helps keep going. If you want everything else, then it's £4.50 or whatever it is. If Jeremy Hunt had his way, sort of thing, that would be like about £10 by now. But he doesn't. So it's £4.50 or your local equivalent. And that gets you access to our Discord. It gets you the episodes early and ad-free. It gets you the opportunity to ask us questions for our Ask the Podcast when we actually get around to doing that, which should be soon. We really need to do that, by the way. And all of the stuff. So, get to interact interact and stuff and meet other people on our cool Discord and all that kind of shizzle and anything else we decide to put out. And yeah, early episode. And it helps us out. Yep. It keeps us going. It pays for server costs and things like that. And that would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you have the opportunity, if you can't do that, we appreciate that everyone can. If you want to give us a mention on Twitter, if it's still going when you hear this.
Blue ticks for everyone.
Blue ticks for everyone. Yay. We haven't got a blue tick. I'm not paying that. It's rubbish. Stupid. We're the only official Zapped to the past. No one's going to impersonate us, just us. But yeah, so you can mention us on Twitter if you want to give us a rating, a review on iTunes and things like that. It all helps, gets us back into view where people can see us and find us and listen to us and things like that. So that's all cool if you like us. If you can't do any of that and you know someone who likes C64, or even if they don't like the C64, just tell them about us anyway. Just play us to them.
Yeah.
Just tell them.
Get on with it.
Yeah, so so it'd be great if you could become our free advertisers. That would be ace.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, do that.
That'd be brilliant. So if you could do that, we love you forever. We love you.
Share and share alike.
Indeed. And that's it. That's the plug done for this one. So should we get into some games, Mr. Raddings?
That sounds like the original plan. Yes,
it is. Okay, so let's get into episode 88's games right now. And the first one, well, it's another biggie. It's another C64 biggie, I think. This is Samurai Warrior, The Battles of Usagi Yojimbo. This was £8.95, got a 91% Sizzler rating. And so let's see if it still holds up. The time is the 17th century. The place is feudal Japan. It is rife with civil war as the great warlords battle for control of the shogunate, which will give them control over Japan itself. Into this chaos steps Usagi Yojimbo, which literally translates, as far as I'm aware, to Rabbit Bodyguard, a wandering Ronin rabbit who must oppose the forces of darkness wherever he finds them. So this was published by Firebird, but it's actually the work of Beam Software, namely Doug Palmer on coding duties, Paul Kidd on scripting, story and design, Russell Compt on visuals, and the ever-reliable Neil Brennan on music and sound effects. So the original story for this owes itself to a series of comic books created by Stan Sakai and first appeared in something I've never heard of, Albedo Anthropomorphics #2 in 1984.
News to me, that I've never heard of it.
No, neither have I. I knew this was a comic. I didn't know where it first started, though, but that's according to what my research that told me. By 1986, the success of the character led to his own summer special and his ongoing series starting in July 1987. So to put this in its simplest of terms, this is a left-to-right fighting game in a similar mold to things like Fighting Warrior and Street Hassle, to name but two. And the actual comics themselves, if you can guess from the word anthropomorphics, it's essentially feudal Japan imagined as populated by animals, humanoid animals. So you play a rabbit, there are walking boars, there are all kinds of different animals. All the people, they're not people, they're anthropomorphic animals, and that's what this is. Okay, so this is a left-to-right fighter, essentially, but Samurai Warrior, Usagi Yojimbo, it does things a little bit different. So when the game starts, after a decent atmospheric loading screen, we are greeted with one of the simplest title screens we have yet seen. And I think on reading some interviews around this, it was probably due to probably not having enough memory to do a better one. But I'll come to some of those things later. We have three options here. F1 flicks between the full game and a practice mode. F3 chooses joystick or keyboard. And F7, or pressing fire, starts the game, or the practice mode. If you choose the practice mode, you get a series of posts covered in hay to attack in order to learn the combat in the game. I'll come to how that works in a bit. Having done that, you obviously want to start the game, and it's right from the off that this feels somewhat different to other takes on this genre we have seen. The game starts you on the left of the screen. So whereas for the rest of the game, save walking between levels and some combat encounters, you spend it in the middle of the screen. I think that this is a direct nod to the start of Super Mario Brothers, which does exactly the same thing. Starts you on the left before you move into the middle to start the screen scrolling. And there is no threat. There's no threat here. So the game doesn't start off throwing enemies at you. There's just no threat. It's nice and calming. The graphics are nice and bright and bold. The music is gentle and calming. The screen has a basic UI at the top with your amount of money in Ryu held and your karma score. And at the bottom are two bars. The one on the left showing your health. The one on the right, ominously empty, simply says enemy. Okay, so that's what we've got. In the top left of the screen is a portrait of Usagi himself. So you've got close with his face. The screen will not start scrolling until you are in the middle of it. So you have a little space here to familiarize yourself with the controls again if you didn't bother with the practice mode. Because the game does offer quite a complex control system with just a joystick and button, and there's no keyboard usage at all. Basic commands without the fire button, you can walk right and left. Up does a basic jump. Diagonal up does a small jump in the direction pressed. If you press the fire button and you press down in any direction, that causes Usagi to bow. And that's quite useful. We'll come to why that is in a bit. And fire and press it in the direction faced causes Usagi to offer some of his money, his Ryu. You only have limited amounts of that, so be careful. Pressing fire and up in any direction causes Usagi to draw his sword and enter combat mode. Here, the portrait changes to show Usagi in a ferocious battle mode, so his face in the portrait goes, it all changes. The music changes to a much faster tempo, and control of Usagi speeds up. Walking is now running, and jumping forward or back is now much further. Combat is controlled with just a fire button and is based on how long you hold the fire button for. Holding it constantly down, Usagi will complete a full swing of his sword and end up holding it above his head, ready for a downward slash once you let go. This is the most powerful but also the longest move to get to. If you release the fire button in the middle of the swing, you will do a side slash. This doesn't do as much damage as the overhead slash, but is quicker to get to. Letting go of the fire button immediately, so just tapping it, causes Usagi to deflect any attacks coming in, but will not do any damage to the enemy you may be facing. This takes a little bit of getting used to, but once done, you can pull off moves quickly and with ease when you need them. It's all about learning the time to hold the fire button down, whether you want to, if some enemy's close into you, you can tap to sort of get them back and then do a quick slash to sort of do some damage. If they're running towards you, you can prepare with a big overhead slash and then slash them as they come in range. And it becomes second nature once you've played this for a little bit. If you wish to sheath your sword, you pull down in the opposite direction to which you are facing and press fire, and Usagi will go back to peaceful mode, as will the music and the portrait. So that's what happens here. So you've got these two control modes, sort of aggressive and non-aggressive, and you need to be careful where you use them throughout the game, as being in aggressive mode can get you into all kinds of trouble. Onwards into the game then. The visuals are noted are bright, lots of solid blocks of colour for the backgrounds. They generally work pretty well, I thought. At the start, you're walking past a field with mountains in the background. It's all very idyllic. It's very nice. Very soon, you encounter the first of the game's various characters, and it's here that the game's systems start to open up. The first character we meet is a peasant tending the road, and the option as to what you do here is up to you. You can totally ignore them, just walk past, as they are a lower caste than you. And this is how the game works. It has a caste system like ancient Japan would have. So there are people who are higher than you, lower than you, same as you, and so it depends on where they are as to what actions you can do or what you should do around them. If you don't do anything, they will bow to you anyway, and you can just wander past them. If you, however, choose to bow to them first, they will be honoured, and this will increase your karma score. However, you can whip out your sword and chop them down. If you really want to, you can attack them and kill them. This will lose you karma, and this is a bad thing, because Usagi is a noble Ronin, and should your karma ever go down to 0, you'll stop what you're doing and immediately commit seppuku, and it's game over. Don't let your karma get to 0. Be nice. That's what this game wants you to do. So you need to keep an eye on your karma score at all times, and make sure you choose the path of virtue whenever you can. You can also offer money to the peasant, and this will again increase your karma score, but you only have limited resources, and you need money to buy food later on to get your health back. So again, you have to balance this out. Peasants are not the only people you'll find along your way. Ninjas will be hiding in or behind trees, or generally in the background somewhere. As soon as you get near them, they will instantly attack, and if you do not take them down, they can whittle away your health quickly. They're fast, but they're not that hard. So a good overhead slash usually takes them down. But they're fast and they'll jump around, and you've got to sort of time your attack. They can be a bit of a pain. But if you know what they're doing. And I like the way that they sort of crappily hid behind trees or up in trees, and you can sort of see them or in the background. I like the way that the game doesn't, it's like they're hiding, but the game doesn't go out of its way to just have them suddenly appear. They're there in the environment. I quite like that. Other Ronin, just like you, wander about. Some with rabbit heads, others have boar heads. And most of them will just wander on past you. They'll bow to you if you bow to them. But most of them will just ignore you and carry on about the way. You can attack them, though. It's up to you. It's completely up to you what you want to do in this game a lot of the time. Some of them will attack you, though, on sight if they've heard about you or they're against you. Some of them will often do other stuff, but mostly they'll just wander past. But it's not always obvious what they're going to do. Monks armed with poles will also be wandering about, and I'm going to give you a tip. It'll serve you well to not get on the wrong side of them. So don't go in fast and deadly, because they are brutal. They jump about really fast. It's hard to hit them, and they will kill you in no time whatsoever. At times, high-ranking characters will appear, and you must bow to them or face the wrath of their guards. So they'll just be wandering down. They won't bow to you, though. They might go thanks or something along those lines. When you do bow to like the monks and stuff, you get a little nice piece of text. You get like a little sort of fortune cookie, like saying the first and the end, the first and the last, aren't they just the same, and things like that. So which is quite nice. I like that. So that gives it a little bit of a atmosphere and feeling like sort of interacting with the characters. The levels themselves are linear affairs. You just walk from from sort of left to right, and the enemies in this are preset. So you can learn this game, and that's a good thing for me. You can get to know how this game is laid out. But running along with your sword drawn, which is not what you want to do, it will earn you the ire of anyone who comes on screen. So you need to take this slowly. So you want to be just walking. If you take your sword out and run, then a normal Ronin just walking past will be instantly, annoyed, and they will just attack you as well. The monk guards, and they can be coming in 2s and 3s at times. So you've got to be careful here. Keep an eye out for ninjas. You're ready to fight them. Try and keep them off the screen. If someone else, someone else, you've got to learn how these sort of enemies and where they appear and what to do at certain times. And that's part and parcel of this game. Some levels end with a fork in the path, and then it's up to you which way you go. So there's certain levels, not all of them, but like even the very first level has a fork. If you go down straight on, down the bottom fork, it leads you into like a forest. If you go to the top, it leads you into the mountains. Both of them have different enemies on them and different ways through them and rewards and things like that. So that's, again, this is a nice touch. Some levels offer hidden caves, jumps and things like that, little sort of simple jumps to jump over, hidden caves to sort of go into. Usually in the hidden caves, there's these huge monsters, await that they've got to be killed, and if you kill them, like there's one in the mountains, if you go there, and then there's like a shrine or something, and you need to offer money at that shrine, because if not, they curse you and you lose karma and things like that. So you've got to be careful. You've got to have money if you want to go in there. There's a lot of choice in this game. This is one of the things I really like. As long as you keep your karma up, it's kind of up to you how you approach it. You can go in all guns blazing and fight people, because you might want, killing people gives you money. Sometimes they'll drop cash, so you can use the cash to get health and stuff back, so you can get money from the Ronin, or you can walk the path of the righteous. It's up to you. And I think that element of this game makes this another game we have seen that is like the train. I think this is really forward thinking. This is a game that doesn't feel like much else on the Commodore 64 that we have played to this point. Now you can see probably its ancestry sort of thing in what they tried to do in Fist 2, okay? But this actually nails it and gets it down a lot better. This does it a hell of a lot better. For one, there's no bugs that I could come across. It's not hard, and I think there's a lot to this game. It's not too hard if you look at recently, if you see games like Ghost of Tsushima, and if you go back a bit further, things like Bushido Blade, that borrow this kind of karma idea. And indeed, we've seen many games like Mass Effect use Renegade and Paragon options and things like that to highlight what kind of character you are. This notion of do bad deeds, get punished, do good deeds, get get celebrated, then that's we see that in so many games these days. But that is the kind of one of the make or break systems within this game. It's not quite as thingy and getting down to zero, committing seppuku. I would quite have liked, Fable is another one where you can do bad deeds and things like that. And this game is doing that really to some degree by, your karma goes up if you do good stuff, and you want to keep your karma high, but yeah, you can do bad stuff. You can balance out. It's not perfect, but you can see the initial system of that here in this game, I think. So the gameplay in this is fairly simple, and it's not a game that's too hard to make your way through. It doesn't punish you. You can learn it. It's fairly simple to get through and make your way through the different levels. The combat can be quite tricky, but you got to get your timing right, and so and be nice. Choose the fights where you need to fight. And I haven't even mentioned what the story is yet, because the story in this game, which is another thing I like about this, it kind of only starts about 4 or 5 levels in. You get a glimpse of the panda, which is Lord Noriyuki, and being kidnapped by one of the evil Lord Hikiji's henchmen. And that's what you've got to go. So you've got a quest, and you pick it up halfway through. And that's, from my understanding, that is one of the tenets they took from the comics, because the comics will usually just start with, he's a wandering Ronin. So he's just wandering about the land and happens upon adventure and happens upon stuff going on and then partakes in that. So that's my understanding of the comics. So this game actually takes from that and says, right, well, let's just start you as a wandering Ronin. We're not even going to put you in the game, in the story. That doesn't start until midway through. So it follows that, and it sort of wraps that into the game, so it allows you this space and time just to be a wandering Ronin. And you're barely told what the story is. It's just there. It just kind of happens, and it's that kind of wandering Ronin, similar to like the Shogun Assassin films, I guess, or whatever they were called, a Baby Cat, whatever. I can never remember the right names for those films, but those kind of films about these Japanese films, it takes these sort of nods from them. And then what I think this game does, it creates a game that's got a mood, it has an atmosphere, and there's a tone that we don't think have really seen in Commodore 64 games up to this point. There's a few, this is doing something different. It feels relaxed, like it's confident in its own skin. It doesn't feel the need to bother you constantly with 100 enemies. It's just like, here you go, we've planned our enemies, we've planned our routes, you go. Enjoy this adventure. Because we've played loads of left to right fighters, and so the options open to the player, play it in a way that suits them, makes it a really, as I said, a forward-thinking game. I loved this back then. It's the only game I ever mapped. I drew it, I got 2 sheets of A3 and I mapped the entire thing. I fought my way through it, no cheats, made my way through. I loved this. Going back to it now, it still feels like very little else we've played through the course of this podcast. Yeah, as I said, there are echoes of Fist 2, things like that. But I like the clever combat system. It's simple, but it works. I like the interaction with characters. The barely there story, which sort of reminded me of the Souls games in the way that the story is there if you want it, but it's not front and center at all. The branching paths, the little details in the visuals, like the fly flying past, the little creatures that you can hack the head off if you want to. The way you get your health back in the village by you go to a cafe, there's a guy there you can gamble with if you choose to. You can, and then when you eat, you ask for food and he sits down, he gets his meal come on. They don't just go, yeah, here's your health. The woman goes off and she brings the meal back and he sits down and he has a little chow down. It's ace. The various characters wandering about. Sometimes there has for tolls. Sometimes some characters will just say, oh, I want to duel with you. First hit wins. And it's just, okay, let's do it. It's like that. It feels like a 2D version of those open worlds we'd go on to play now. Like I said, Ghost of Tsushima, all those kind of things. This feels like one of those. It's like a designed game. This feels like a designed game. I think this is a very special game, in my opinion. It nails that left-to-right combat style game that we've seen. Fighting Warrior, your Amazon Wierings, your Fist 2s, all those things so many others have had a go at and they've failed at. I think this is a proper classic. 91%, not even close. Not even close to what this gets in my eyes. I always forget, and the thing with this game is that it always slips my mind when I put my lists together. But coming back to it now, yeah, this is ace. I love it. I love everything about Usagi Yojimbo. It's just a solid game. And it's interesting, there's a really good interview with the makers on Retro Gamer. It's on the website, and how much they had to cut to get it into the C64. And one of the interesting things about it was that the code base for it was all just came from libraries that they'd already built. So things like Fist 2 and things like that, where they just had these code libraries that they could just plug in the code and stuff like that, which they said allowed them the time and space to think about the design and the story and how it would all tie together. And the amount they had to cut out, they said, was loads. So that's why it is what it is. But there are stuff in there that they really wanted to put in that they just couldn't fit in. And it does feel in that way like that's the reason why this game feels like, well, it's not fighting against the time scale or you could hear the developers saying, we had the time and space to make it. So often we've seen games where it's clear that they've not had the time and space to do what they wanted. And when they're allowed to do that and you get good programmers and you get a nice design and somebody works on how this game should feel, you get games like this. We said it about sensible software stuff, Whizball and things like that. When you allow them the space and time, you get these classics. And for me, this is still a classic. What about you?
It's a charming old thing, isn't it? It is, always was. Always had that kind of meandering charm. Always kind of a playable thing. It was always a kind of the better version of Fist 2. It was kind of revered that way. I remember getting it way back in the day. Cracked version. I remember getting it via some nefarious means and it arriving through the post like these things did when you were getting them through the post. And it is that kind of kinder, gentler take on a kind of walk and seek, isn't it? Varied backgrounds, I suppose. Really well realised sprites. I quite like the design of the sprites. Very in keeping to the cartoon comic. And that's all good. Easy to use controls. I mean, the controls and everything else, that's clever the way they've done that because it doesn't take long to get used to them. There's not... No. Massive amounts of moves and complexity, they keep it simple, and that kind of works to its advantage. And the whole Bushido and the rules about being a good samurai and making sure that your karma doesn't hit zero and all of that. That's all great stuff. It takes a simple idea and it's in keeping with the mechanics of this game, which because they haven't got the memory to rely on filling it full of stuff, it keeps it empty enough to be able to get away with it, so that. It keeps it peaceful because that's the nature of the game. So it's a game about keeping the peace, being peaceful, which is what samurais actually did. They were peacekeepers, contrary to what you might think in the portrayal of samurais that going around hacking and slashing people with samurai swords. That's not actually what they were at all. Quite the opposite. They were very, very courteous, very, like you say, very much about their caste and about honor. And so they didn't do dishonorable things like go around murdering and killing people. Anyone that did that they'd be cast out for being a samurai, and you'd end up wouldn't be a samurai. And of course, Ronins are still samurais, aren't they? They're without lords. They're just unemployed samurais, essentially.
Yeah.
So all good. I like the Bushido thing. It's all very nice. Music's pleasant, really easy on the ear. It's really strange how something so repetitive can be actually so pleasant.
Yep.
But as soon as it starts with that, that you get that famous sort of pang, pang, pang. And it's a suitably oriental music, but it's not offensive in any way. Nice. I think the fact that the characters bow and curtsy to you and all the rest of it is really cool. The ninjas that hide, all good. There's all sorts of good stuff going on. There's lots of like it here in many, many different ways. But there are also things that lack. And there's no getting away from it, because I remember feeling the same way about it back then as I felt when I replayed it for this. It gets repetitive and a bit too quick. because the nature of this game is that it is a kind of a slow walk through some various places. Now, doesn't mean that it isn't interesting because of its choices. It just feels like it can get monotonous, and it can just feel like an endless plod along the pathways with variously obvious encounters. Because once you've encountered the various different items, they don't vary that much from what they are. They might appear in different places in different ways, but it's the same thing. Ninjas attack, they do this, something else does that. Ninjas attack, you do this, and it can get a little bit monotonous. Now, it is broken up by some elements of the game itself, and like you say, the actual game doesn't really start for quite a while, but that is the kind of the mainstay of the game. Now, okay, let's put that to one side. I think the backgrounds, I think they just about get away with the variety. They do repeat in that kind of Scooby-Doo way, but they're not terrible for it. And a bit like the music, they kind of get away with it because it's just kind of background Japan. A description. So it's just like it's a field with some trees in it is a field with some trees in it. So it doesn't really matter. And the way they've sort of dual focused it. So you've got obviously the main area of the gameplay is actually on the path at the front, where you've got Usagi, Yojimbo, and the characters running about. And then you've got kind of the background details have kind of become neither here nor there, really. And that's quite clever the way they've done that. So it distracts you enough to keep you away from the background. Because if you didn't, otherwise you'd notice that you've gone past the same bridge about 50 times as you sort of walk along. And I like the villages, and I like the other parts of the game are clever. You're right, actually. I think there are definite inferences. I thought the same as you. I thought I wouldn't so much say Ghost of Tsushima, although that's because it's about samurais, you could maybe get it. I thought Mini Ninjas owed a little bit to this maybe. In some ways, in that kind of cutesy characters doing ninja-y things with animals, because that's full of animals and things like that. And there's definitely, Mini Ninjas has got, I think, even though it's 3D, it's heavily borrowing from this. That's got karma and things like that in it as well. And obviously, but I think there's a couple of games where you sort of, I think there's no doubt they've borrowed some ideas from this. Obviously, the idea of going evil or not being, or going good, because obviously you can't become evil in this because you kill yourself rather than do that, which is kind of the whole point of his character, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I get where you're going with the Fable idea, definitely. I think had more of those villagers talk to you and stopped to have mini conversations with you as opposed to just walking past and saying, have a nice day or whatever. I think if that had happened, you could draw a direct line from this to Fable, because it isn't much of an extension, is it really, to think about that? And even that's where the sword fights work in this, with clusters of sword fights. I think somebody has definitely played this without a doubt, and then has probably, and it's clearly influenced Fable or Fable 2 and all the other Fable variants, and other games like it. But I think I noticed it most, and you played a lot more of those kind of games than me, but my experience of the Fable, I think it was Fable 2 that I played all the way through. I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't it was on the Xbox 360. That's where, when you said Fable, I thought, actually, yeah, that's the one that clearly there's a definite influence from this. There's no doubt about it, because it is that future-facing idea, and that is an amazing thing. I think what this really suffers from, for me a little bit, is it's just the space between. It just suffers for a little bit from two things, actually. A lack of things to do other than just fight and walk. Because obviously you can go around giving money out, but you can't do it forever. And there are villages, but it just lacks a little bit. But that's kind of, I sort of get that that's the point of the game, because the game isn't running around killing people, because that isn't the game. The game is to, achieve, the end goal by trying to do it the most peaceful way you can. I get that. It just feels like this large spaces of nothing. But I also think that had this been the opposite way around, if it was large spaces of something, would be in Underworld, was it Territory, or some of those early Edge games where it's just
or Karateka springs to mind, where it's just, that's just constant fighting.
Yeah, and I think that the balance was wrong there, isn't it? And I think they've got the balance right, but I'm not one with having a lot of patience for wandering around in games. So that's more of a me thing, really. I like the notion of remaining true to the path, as I say. I think there's elements of this that set that apart, but it does have distinctly dull moments of wandering and plodding around. And even though that's the kind of peaceful nature of things, I suppose it does make getting attacked by ninjas exciting for the first couple of times it happens. You sort of, even though you're kind of walking around, you never really feel like you're getting anywhere in this game. It doesn't give enough away to make you feel like you're progressing. Fist 2 had the exact same problem. Unless you happen to collect 2 or 3 of those trigram things, it could feel like you were just wandering around purposely or without a purpose for ages. Now, I know that there's a direction, there is a direction to this, but at the same time, it does feel like sometimes, I was wandering around for ages before I ended up getting attacked by a giant dragon thing in the woods, which, by the way, dispatched me in a matter of 2 hits, and then it's game over. And I think that's one of my other big bugbears in this, is that it's it's easy to die in this. It wasn't this stupid deaths in this, like there was in Fist 2. If you fall down a chasm, obviously it will kill you, but it's a bit, if you die, I mean, that's it, you're back to the beginning again. There's no lives or anything like that. And not that you and you don't get lives. I get the idea, because there isn't a way of, there would never be a way of being able to shoehorn lives into a game like this, because it doesn't work like that. But it just kind of makes it, if you really got quite far and then you just happen to not quite get the fight quite right and you're back to the beginning again, it's just, no. I think eventually I would tire of that. So it's likable. I'll give it that. It's presented in a really clever way, and there's no doubt about that, and very influential, I think. I think you're right about that. And it's not something I'd wholly thought of before, but I completely get where you're going with that, and I would agree. And if you like this kind of pace to things, and it does suit some people and not others, then you'd be in Oriental heaven for this. And that is not the name of a massage parlor, by the way. That is a genuine comment. But I couldn't shake the feeling that while nice, it just wouldn't have me playing it repeatedly. I'd go for a few goes, which is kind of what I did. And I'm like, I'm just sick of starting again. I got sick of starting at the beginning, going through the same thing again, same enemies again. Yeah, you can get better at them. Yeah, you can remember it. But do you want to? Without any kind of real progress, without any kind of, you've got this far, without any kind of, and I tell you what, I think it's missing most of all, Aid, this. I think if it had a little bit of discussion from characters and the occasional still screen or small screen where it just progressed something. So you felt, you've got this far. Like you imagine if it was 3 cells from the comic just appeared as you got so far into the game, and then so you got a little bit of, just like that. Maybe call it a cutscene if you like, but not as elaborate as that. Might have required more than the disc loading or whatever it is on this, but just some of that stuff it needed. I get that they may not have had enough memory for that or whatever, but those are the things for me which would have turned this from being what is genuinely an interesting game that just feels a bit ploddy to something that really kept you engaged in something that just kept you in the story a little bit more. And I just didn't, and I'm crying out for that with this. And other than that, I think if you want a nice peaceful walk around with a few interruptions, this is the game for you. I don't dislike the Usagi Yojimbo. I think the score, I would say it's probably about right, because I think it is missing those things, but that's just me. But there's no denying it's a clever game. There's no denying that.
I think my recent other game playing has fed into sort of a more appreciative version of this, because I know it has echoes, like you said, of the Fable game, but in its structure, it's quite Dark Souls-like, because Dark Souls world is a series of walking towards some enemies that are always in the same place, that are always there. You will die, and obviously it has the bonfire, so it has a bigger world and things like that, but the world itself is fixed. So there are always the same enemies in the same places. When you go to those places and you fight them, and if you go to bonfire, they reappear. They're always there. They're always the same. And it has that. And quite a chunk of Dark Souls sometimes is just walking towards the next fight.
Yeah. No, I'd say it suits some people, that kind of thing. Just
and I think that's why when I played this, I was like, do you know what? This really, in structure-wise, really reminds me of that. But I think it was a boon to get away from things like what did we play last week? Where it was just constantly that Jester one, Black Lamp, those kind of games where you just constantly bothered. Looks nice, but constantly bothered. And I think I get it. I know your penchant for action and things like that, and I get it. So and I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's just this to me, I think, just tied into some things I've been playing recently. I went, you know what, this feels like an 8-bit version of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's even hints of Assassin's Creed and things like that. Really, that kind of you could almost say that leans on it, but it still has a hook. There's still a hook that keeps you involved in the main central premise, and this just doesn't have it. I mean, just looking at the interview again, one of the things he wanted was that they said they wanted to just keep that wandering Ronin style of gameplay, and they were, that's what they wanted to do. They went for that. And the other thing, I think, what it tries to do, and almost does it, but it obviously can't, because it's it's an 8-bit game. It wants to do that sort of game style where it's peaceful, but the combat is brutally fast. Because the combat in this is really fast. It happens. Yeah, no, I think that works in this.
And I think they get it. They try, and I think that's what they're trying to do here as well, which you don't see very often. I mean, Fist 2 attempted it, but had problems. I mean, like you said, Fist 2 could wander around. I thought Fist 2 was too wandery. This is a move left to right and go. But yeah, I can see why. I agree with you that it has those moments of calm and just wandering. Your liking for this will just be how much tolerance you have.
I think it never hurts now and again in a game like this to remind people of the compelling reason why you are doing what you're doing.
Yes, I get that, but that's why I'm saying, having just come from all the bloody Souls games, they never tell you the story at all. You get to the end of the game and go, what have I just done? And you're like, I don't. So you have to go off and try and find out what you've done by looking at things and reading stuff and reading around. And
as we all know, those Souls games are very divisive. People do. Yes. Obviously, there's loads of people that love them, but there's a lot of people that think the same thing. That I think they just suit one kind of play to another. But just for me, you'd need to put a bit more cutscene in it.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I completely understand that, and I get it.
I fell up with the last God of War game because of that, and I love God of War games. So
yeah, you can sometimes just feel like, what am I doing? And it depends on the ambience created. I think where the way the world works and things like that. But there you go, Usagi Yojimbo. It's coming. I still love it, but yeah, it's what it is. There we go. That's the first one. That was a long review. That's a long review. Let's move on.
Well,
quickly.
Don't worry, because the next one ain't going to take that bloody long.
That's true. Let's move on. Jesus Christ, Graham, you got GunSmoke. I do apologise.
You don't need to apologise. It's fine. We take the rough with the smooth, don't we? This is very rough. This is very, very rough. So this is from Go. I just wish it had gone. Never mind, Go. Copyright Capcom originally, and the producer was Linden and Associates. You can't make yourself sound posher by making it sound like you're a lawyer firm. Troy Linden, who made this game. So it was produced and actually developed by Troy A. Linden, who was the guy that designed and coded Howard the Duck. Okay.
Yeah.
I won't hold that against him.
I would.
There's no... Well,
just hit him.
We all make mistakes.
His face looks like a bill.
So this is based on an arcade, isn't it? A 1985 vertical scrolling run-and-gun shooter game from Capcom, which was designed by Yokishi Okamoto. So this was kind of a Western-themed Commando. It's the easiest way. In fact, it is Western Commando, isn't it? Western.
It is, yeah.
Essentially. There's a few extra bits. The arcade had multiple gun buttons, didn't it? Shoot buttons.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to play. I tried it on MAME.
I think this is there shoot left, sort of shoot upper left, shoot upper right, and foot. Yeah. So it had 3 shoot, but okay, and that's kind of what they did in some of these quirky old games like this, because obviously this is basically, if you took, it's Commando in cowboy outfits, really.
Yeah, with spurs on.
With spurs and stuff like that. And the arcade, I had a look at the arcade. All good. You play a character named Billy Bob. I'm guessing that's the same character in the C64 version. Who knows, really? And who really cares, actually? He's a bounty hunter, apparently, after criminals in the Wild West. That element is kind of kept. So it's the C64 version then. So I don't have to go overly descriptive with the story or everything else, because there isn't really one, generally speaking. You've got to try and work your way up. It's the same as the arcade. So it's a kind of that except the C64 is a crappy Commando type deal. And you've got to gunsling your way up 5 levels, each one full of enemies, including other cowboys, outlaws, Native Americans, or their horrible stereotype equivalent. Well, less said about that, the better. Horses or cows. I couldn't tell which they were, because these animals just come at you, which is odd. That, these were very valuable to the people of the of the plains. You didn't just send in the cows or send in the horses, arbitrarily.
Billy Bob's coming, send in the cows.
So just like a cowboy, bring a cow to a gunfight. Anyway, so they do that. But so the idea is you got to reach the end of this, and it's played out as kind of Commando. So you're scrolling from the bottom upwards. You control the character shooting upwards to the top left to the top right, and you've got to make your way to the end. When you reach the end, you've got to shoot out. You have a shootout with one of the 5 bosses for the bounty that is on the head. You do get some kind of information about the bounty, because this is a multi-load. I'll come back to the horror of that. But each one of these has a kind of a reward, and so that's how it plays out. So it's onwards then. The levels are town, railroad, canyon, rapids, and meadow. In the rapids, you're atop some kind of raft, apparently. Did you get that far? I never got that far.
No.
Not necessarily because it was difficult, because it is difficult, but not because of that, but because it's horrible. I didn't want to get any further. There's some upgrades you can pick up as well, as obviously with this kind of game. It actually really plays out a bit like a top-down shooter, this. It's more or less a top-down shoot-em-up, because your character shoots from the bottom upwards, and the enemies come from the top down. It's kind of a shoot-em-up. So it's not, if he flew as opposed to walked, such as it did, then it would be. So the things you can pick up, extra bullets, although I thought that looked like a giant, large white dildo. Unpleasant, that. Careful what you do with that. You can pick up a pair of boots that speed you up, apparently. They didn't know, really. A horseshoe that's meant to give you a horse to ride on, which gives you extra strength so you don't die on a single hit from the enemy bullets. But it actually looks like you just grow a giant white pair of legs. Because at that point, it's just, if you imagine the view of this game, by the way, is you see the cowboy from, like Commander, you see it from behind the player. So behind and above. So you're seeing a cowboy from behind and above on a horse, but it doesn't animate the horse going in like left or right or diagonally. It's just from behind. So it looks weird. It just looks like a man on a horse with white legs from the back like that. Makes it look like it's just a cowboy with horse legs. It's really weird and really strange. So I don't think it was meant to look like that, but that's what it came out. Anyway, you don't die in a single hit when you're on the giant, when you grow horse legs. It's just weird. There's also an extra life somewhere. Not that you'll want it, because it just prolongs the pain. And there might be some others. I didn't encounter any others. That's just the ones I got to. They're kind of strewn around, a bit like the enemies in this game. Like I said, it's played from the top down in a vertical shoot 'em up kind of way. And I think really it's a crappy shoot 'em up at heart. It's not a good version of the arcade. The arcade has a lot more going for it in terms of, one, it's speedy. It's faster. Two, it's better. So it's just like the Japanese think a Commando variant. This, not so much. So this C64 version, then, it's a blocky mess. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. The graphics are not good. That's me being kind. You got a slow-moving main sprite that's really fat as well. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm not fat-shaming anyone, but the sprite is just bad. It's just a splat of a sprite. This cowboy's got a lot of girth, and not in the way you might think. So it's kind of badly realised and badly animated, and I don't think there's much of an excuse for the kind of way this animates. This is the equivalent of, bod. Is like left leg goes up, right leg goes up, and it's just not good that. You control this monstrosity with the joystick, and this overwhelmed me how stupid this is. So to get around the idea that you had 3 buttons, directional buttons, if you move upwards, you don't shoot unless you press the fire button. But if you move top left or top right, the shot automatically shoots. It's so stupid. It defies belief. It's so stupid. What's the point? What's the point in doing it like that? Yeah. To give you the advantage of shooting upwards. Yep. You may as well just do it all the same if you're going to do that. And I don't get it. Why not just, if you move direction? I don't get it. Why auto shoot? Why? If you're moving that direction with the joystick and you press the button, why does he not just shoot that way anyway?
Yeah.
To ask these questions is folly, really, isn't it? Because that would imply that care and attention and thought had been put into this. And none of those things apply here. I can assure you of that. So you have to shoot at the enemies that are coming at you, who will die when you shoot them. There's loads of different ones. They're really weird, though. And there's just such an odd collection of things that come at you in this game. I'm pretty sure I was attacked by a chef at one point. Like a chef with a giant cleaver, I think it was. I'm not sure. Or a butcher, was it? Maybe, I don't know what it was. But they just kind of float around or cling to the middle. They honestly, these are the worst enemies. They just line up. They just line up to be shot. There's no forethought or anything like that. There's no tactics in this. It's not like in the Rambo games or the Commando games where the enemies kind of flank you. And I know it's not really real. Like, they don't really try and flank you, but they do at least have a pattern which sort of feels, other than just run at you aimlessly from everywhere. They even appear on top of buildings and then just shoot at the angles. And once they get past you, if they go behind you, they're just behind you. They can't shoot upwards. They can't turn around. I guess they just keep on going. So they're just, are they waiting for the next cowboy who happens along? I don't know.
Angularly challenged.
They're rubbish, and they're really bad shots as well. Terrible shots. The chances of you being hit are more often because you run into a bullet rather than the bullet run into you, which is not the way you really think about these games, is it? That's hand in hand with the slowness, because the game is slow, so avoiding things feels weird. The bullet speed is wrong, because it's not, I can't explain it, but to play it, you'd know that things shouldn't run at this speed in any way. It's kind of too slow to be playable. But just anyway, it's just not very good. So like I said, the enemies handily line up so you can shoot them easily, but shooting at angles often leaves the collision detection so blatantly confused it's beyond belief. It also happens all over the place. So especially when you were menaced by the horses or cows or whatever they were, where they just come running at you. I didn't feel totally comfortable with a one-shot kill to a cow. It felt mean. But if they hit you, it's RIP and you get this little grave and it's back you go. You don't always go back to the start. There are progressive start points, but to be fair, it doesn't really make a difference. There's no logic to the enemy patterns here. They just meander across and past and just get in the way. And once you avoid them, like I say, they go past you and I guess they're just waiting for the next person. It feels like a crappy theme ride. So you trundle upwards, shooting at all blocky renditions of Western characters, some of them obvious, some of them less so. None of them are well realised. The backgrounds are a sad blend of brown speckled ground with buildings, which they will no doubt change colour for later levels or mix and match. I didn't actually want to find out. The arcade is a lot better than this, and clearly a rebadged Commando. This one is not. There's so much to dislike in this game. Apart from the problematic depiction of Native Americans and the shit idealised version of the Wild West, the game is so badly engineered, it's unbelievable at this price. There's no love or passion here, just a diabolical version of a slightly above average Commando variant. Graphics are bad, the sound is utterly terrible, A discordant audio assault that is the equivalent of pushing pencils directly into your brain through your ears. Awful.
I love our various descriptions of awful sound. I think I've got one coming up later on.
The game plays slowly and there's bugs everywhere. It's so shoddy and badly made. It's full price. This is a travesty in my book. There's no redeeming notions here. It's all bad. To add insult to injury, it's also a bloody lengthy and painful multi-loader. This sits alongside Jailbreak, I don't know, as one of the worst arcade conversions I think I've ever come across on the C64. Made all the more unbelievable when you consider Vikings, Rambo, Commando, Who Dares Wins 2, hell, even LA SWAT exist. And they did the same thing, if not better than this. Nope. What about you?
Wow, this is really bad. So much loading for so little reward.
I don't want to load. So much loading. I don't know if is there a US version of this, by the way? I suspect there is, but I don't know if it's any better.
Well, I think Linden Associates are a US company, I think, probably. So that's probably why they've just made it for this. But yeah, it's like a reverse Churchill quote, isn't it? So much loading for so little reward.
Never.
Never has there been so much loading for so little reward. Blocky graphics, a mode that plays in complete silence. I thought I'd broken it at first. I was like, why isn't there's no sound?
Silent mode.
more loading, wayward controls, bugs, ugly sprites, terrible backdrops, more loading. This might be the worst arcade conversion we have seen. This is the definition of a rip-off. $9.99. And this is not even arcade state of the art. This is from 1985.
I know.
It's really hard to know what to say about this, about how bad it is. I mean, when you turn the music off, why does it turn the sound effects off? So it's just silence. You just play the game in silence.
Sound or no sound. You choose.
Yeah, that's just bad. But then the sound is awful too. Terrible, reedy music and crap effects. The collision detection is terrible. The enemies are idiots and can walk from the floor to the roofs for some reason. My God, how do you get a basic Commando game so bad? The team behind this, as I said, also did Howard the Duck, and somehow they've made something worse. They've regressed.
No, and that was slow, wasn't it, as well, as I remember?
Yeah, in the middle they made sidearms. I don't know.
That wasn't great though, was it? That had its issues.
It wasn't great, but it wasn't this.
No.
How do these people get work? And how did anyone say this was okay to release? That worst game of the year award is getting more crowded every week.
Isn't it just?
It's going to be a real doozy to try and work that one out.
Oh, God, yeah. Ugh.
No. We're going to have to think about some of these horrors later on. But yeah, this was awful. I'd never played this. I went and played the main version. And yeah, it's like a weird precursor to Ikari Warriors in that you can shoot in a direction and walk in a different direction. So you can sort of walk around and be pushing sort of to fire top right, but walking around in sort of, so it's kind of that trying to do sort of 20 stick controls type thing. But, oh, God, no. This was awful. This C64 version was just diabolical. As soon as it loaded, well, finally, once it loaded, and that white sprite greeted my eyes, I was like, oh, my God, what is this? What is this? And I was not wrong. GunSmoke.
No.
Should have gone up in smoke, this one.
Yep.
Yeah, awful. Bad. Anyway, come on, we've got two more to do yet. Let's move on.
Go.
As if GunSmoke, and I pick these randomly as if GunSmoke wasn't weird enough. We've got another Commando type game. This is UCM, not Underpanted Computer Men, as I hoped, but this
would have been better.
It would have been probably. I can't. What does this stand for? I can't remember. I have written it somewhere. I can't get to it.
Is it Ultimate Combat Mission?
Ultimate Combat Mission, that's the one, yeah. This is only £2 though, so it's not full price. This is a budget one, it's from Mastertronic. The game features UCM, the game features the escapades of Warmonger and Mandroid. This is the second time the word Mandroid has been heard recently, and I do not like it.
No.
Mandroid, according to the box, is the 22nd century, and criminals have all the advantages of modern technology, unlike now. Or back
in
then.
This game.
What those advantages are and what technology is neither here nor there. Okay, the important thing is that they have it. So in order to confine them, the authorities confine them deep in space. But when they place two of the most dangerous men in history in adjacent cells, well, they're just asking for trouble. You can playing as either Warmonger or Mandroid, you must battle to escape the most secure jail ever devised. That's according to the box anyway. This is according to the box as well. This made me laugh. This game features full player interaction. What's that mean?
It doesn't mean anything.
Two very different villains, three-dimensional graphics, superb animation, and superb sound. They're different. It's just two, player one and player two. They play exactly the same. Anyway, this was created by Richard Applin. The musician was Steve Barrett. It was published by MAD for £2. When the game loads, it looks like a demo from the time.
It does look like a demo.
It's got some okay music blasting out. It's all upbeat and poppy, and two scrolly messages take up the screen. One across the middle telling you how to start the show, and the other in a big circle that says welcome to the game before doing a load of hellos, demo style. This is weird. This doesn't feel like a game. You can play this in either 1 or 2 player mode and press in either F1 or F3 starts in either 1 or 2 player mode. There's something odd about 2 player, but I'll come to that later. Once you're in the game, your brain will probably refuse to accept what you're suddenly looking at. That's what I did. I was like, I thought I'd had a brain wrong. Over a starfield, the main sprite from Commando floats upwards, whilst the knockoff level from Warhawk floats down to greet you as more happy up-tempo music kicks in. I was like, none of these go. None of these 3 components fit together in any way, shape, or form. Once you land on the chunky bas relief spaceship level thing, all hell breaks loose as loads, and I mean loads, of Commando sprites spew onto the level in all directions, and your job is just to move upwards and survive. I mean, that's it. That is it. That's it. The controls are simple enough. 8 directions moving and shooting. So it's literally Commando. This is Commando in space. The C64 version of Commando in space. So you run around, you shoot in the direction you're facing. But it does have it has a jump, which is weird. Holding the fire button down will make the character jump, which is actually needed to cover some of the gaps that appear later in the level. Everything at this stage is just manic. There's no planning to this. There's just an explosion of enemies running everywhere. Every now and then one will take aim and kill you. They always do. As soon as one kneels down, you're dead. You've got 5 lives. The whole point is just to make it as far as possible. Every now and then an enemy will appear with a rocket launcher. If you kill them, you can pick it up, and that shoots bombs that explode and takes out more enemies. And that's it. It's just chaos in a can. I don't know how else to describe this. There's no subtlety or design here. It's simply a multiplex of vomiting Commando sprites onto the screen as you make your way upwards and try and survive as long as you can. The UI at the bottom is exactly what you expect. Score, lives, and present weapon strength on it. Weapons? I didn't understand what that was. It might be a rocket launcher. That's about it. It's a terrible game. Awful collision detection. You can just run through enemies. Like, you can just leg it. You don't really need to actually bother shooting anything. Just run upwards. Try and jump over the gaps. They're so stupid that they spew on into the endless void. They're just dying as they run off the gaps into space. So you'll die if you run off. It's just stupid. If you play 2-player mode in this, but with only one controller, you control both characters at once. So they both appear and sort of, with a gap between them, and they just do. It doesn't work. It's like, what is this? But they each have 5 lives and trying to control. It's like, what is going on? I've no idea what the design ethos was behind this, but it just feels like a load of demo logic shoehorned into a game and thrown out by Mastertronic. What little enjoyment there is to be had here soon pales into a listless ennui as you realise there is nothing more to this as you progress upwards into oblivion. UCM, unpleasant coding materialization. Or something. Crap. This was awful. Just awful. It's just someone's nicked Warhawk, or visuals from Warhawk. Someone's nicked Commando and slammed them together. And I can't believe this was like anyone went, yeah, release that. That's good. And the cover, if you've looked at the cover has the enemies, and they've got literally steel underpants on. But there you go. This was awful. What did you think?
Crap. This is crap. Yeah. We've got a sprite multiplexer, and we're going to use it. Damn it. There's lots of there's bits of demo code here. I have a feeling this is stolen code here, stolen code routines. Mm-hmm. Because this feels like some routines that got bolted together, without a doubt. I mean, that sprite multiplexer at the start, which is the letters going around in a big circle, straight out of a demo. That I don't doubt there was a demo they've nicked that code from. The sprites they've stolen, the background definitely stolen and horrible and crap anyway. So they've not even stolen a good background, and they've just managed to somehow get those 3 things to work. Like you said, wave after wave after wave of stupid red soldiers that just are stupid on an endlessly scrolling upward quest for fuck all. What's the point? £2. It's bad value even at that. The music was all right, I guess. Everything else lacked design, thought, and anything else that would constitute this as a game. This is a collection of admittedly clever sprite routines and other people's code, I don't doubt. But there is nothing else here at all. It is naff. So, no. No. Let's say no more about UCM. Ultimate crappy monstrosity.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I was looking for.
That's it.
Untimely cock manipulation.
Okay, I wouldn't have gone down that road, but okay, since we're going down deviant avenue, yeah, okay.
That's what I'd rather do than this.
Yeah, yeah. How did he get 40%? And what did he get 40% for? Music, I guess. The music is all right.
I reckon, yeah, maybe. And the fact that it's got loads of things
That's
to
if they did the music, because I have a feeling I'd heard that music in a demo.
It wouldn't surprise me if this was all just nicked.
I think it's all nicked. I've a funny feeling it is, and I don't think it was ever really meant to be released.
No, probably not. Anyway, it's crap. Let's move on. We've got one game left this part. We'll move into that. Let's fly on into that. So, Graham, tell us all about the Geebee Air Rally, if you want to.
As I like to call it there, Geebee Rally. Good old Tweaky. He's always going to get in there, isn't he?
Geebee
Geebee Air Rally. What's up, Air Rally? Dr. Theopos' crap at flying a plane, I tell you. Tweaky.
Yeah.
Pull
Got no
back on
hands.
the stick. Not that stick, Tweaky. Anyway.
He's a clock.
He's a talking clock, for God's sake. Activision made this, or did this, and released this. It was created by Steve Cartwright. Graphics are by Mike Nowak. And the music is by Russell Leiblich on this version, or Leiblich. I don't know how you say that surname. I'm guessing one of those variations. So this is obviously inspired by things like those magnificent men in their flying machines, that kind of thing. So it's an air race game now. So we'd probably call this the Red Bull Air Rally nowadays or something like that if it came out now.
Yeah, probably.
So just to give you a little brief lowdown from the instrucciones, flocking to Buckeye from all over the world, flyers of all ages, amateurs and pros alike, anyone and everyone who dares to race the legendary Geebee are lining up to test their guts and wits in what Johnny, Little John Daring, has called the air racing competition of the century from the Geebee Air Rally. Racing against the clock, contestants strive to complete 4 courses in 8 game levels, each level more difficult than the last. Really? Accumulating points as they go. The 4th course in each level is a special low-flying, balloon popping or slalom event. Pilots get 2 chances to complete each course in the allocated time. You won't need them. Don't you worry about that. To score the most points, flyers must stay on course and avoid mid-air collisions. Good general advice. With other planes, the clock ticks much faster each movement. The clock ticks much faster each moment. A pilot strays off course, and while it's possible to survive a mid-air mishap and resume racing, most collisions eat up so much of the clock that completing the course in regulation time becomes very difficult. Pilots normally advance from one course to another and from one level to another, only if they successfully complete the last course or level. So that's the instructions. So it's off to the races then. Your altimeter, compass and speedometer appear left to right on your control panel. The allotted time for each race appears at the start of the race in the upper left of the screen, then begins to tick down when the race begins. Your point total appears in the upper right of the screen, except during the special balloon popping event. Special.
Ooh.
Special. To start racing, you press and release, obviously, the joystick button, and obviously you begin to pick up speed, and then you pull back on the stick to climb, soaring into the air. So you control your aeroplane with your joystick, and you fly about trying to sort of think a really naff version of pole position, but in midair. And you won't be far wrong with this bloody piece of crap. So essentially, you've got to fly through the courses and sort of stick to the sort of, I guess, what do they call them? Like you have to fly between the goalposts, essentially. It's hard to define them, really, because they're just kind of blocky sprite things. Yeah, crap.
They're crap.
The clock runs at 4 times the normal speed in this. So they call them pylons, by the way. You've got to steer between the pylons.
Okay.
And obviously you've got to avoid the other flyers in the air. If you get a mid-air collision or you fly, dangerously, you can parachute apparently safe to the ground. I never did that because you don't need to. I found that this was a little bit easy, actually. So obviously you can score by popping the balloons and winning the races, doing that. Then essentially you've got to fly in these air races, akin to that Buck Rogers kind of idea. So if you're thinking Buck Rogers, loads of other games that have been like this. I'll come to the sort of look and feel of it. But essentially, it's an air race game where you control the airplane sprite, which is quite big, but all yellow. It was all yellow, wasn't it, your sprite in this? So you can control it with your joystick, and you got to fly around the course, which is a bit hard to spot. The courses are in there amongst the stroboscopic visuals, and then you got to fly through that. You get to the end, and you just keep doing that. It's one of those kind of games. I think graphically, this is in what we can now call the C64 raster bar zoom mode. So the illusion of speed and flight is, well, I'll say speed in this, is given by how much stroboscopic background stripes you can stand. And it's something we've seen used in loads of games, but principally think that, like I said, Buck Rogers. But I was trying to think, there's so many that do this. And there's loads of them that do that kind of stroboscopic 3D visuals where you're meant to be flying in towards the screen. The 3D, so the raster bars kind of, they get wider as they go towards the bottom to give it that depth effect. All right, kind of works, I suppose. So it's a flying pole position, which is not something you wanted. Who wanted that? Did anyone ever ask for that?
Nope.
And it's got some key issues for me. So number one, the raster color effect strobe is horrible. No way around that. It is. It's horrible. First level's grey and green. Grey and green is not colors you should combine and stripe at people. A pox on you for that. Number two, while your large main sprite is clumsy looking and crappy coloured, they're all clumsy looking and crappy coloured. So they're big sprites, what you're moving around, but there's not many of them, and they're all a bit naff. all of the competitors are exactly the same plane as you as well. There's no variation of planes. They're just you're all flying the same plane type. Okay, that's maybe that it is what it is. I wasn't expecting it to be wacky races, but it would have been nice to have maybe a biplane or something in there as opposed to just the same as you. But they are at least a different color, which is nice. The strobe effect is designed to give you a sense of speed, but there is no sense of speed in this game because the speed needs to be connected to the height, doesn't it? In this, because if you're wanting to emulate something going fast, you need to be a bit close to the ground and feel like and that's something that is a problem. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But of course, number 5 is the difficulty. And that's because this game isn't difficult in the slightest. In fact, it's stupidly easy. I was pretty much able to go almost all the way through this game without really even trying. It isn't hard. There's not much to go at. There's not much in the air. And I found the best way to navigate your way between the pylons is to just aim at them ish, because they're dead wide apart anyway, and it's not like some navigatory track that's narrow and that you've got to get through. Or modern way of doing this would be to have, because this would be more like a mini game in a newer game, wouldn't it? And there's a couple of games where and it would be hoops that you have to fly through, a bit like that Mario game, one of the Mario games where you're in an airplane, or was it Diddy Kong? Where one of them is an airplane.
It's one of them. Yeah,
and you fly through the little circles of, and you got to do it not like that. No, not this one. They're just kind of spaced really wide apart. And I went off track once all the time I was playing this.
Yeah,
once.
Same here.
And then it was like soon back on track, and I was like, and by being off track, I mean I went 1 pixel off to the right, and I was like, I better go back again. Pushed myself to the left. All good. That was it. That was my challenge for the day. Just too bloody easy. There's so many, there are other players to contend with, but they're really easy to avoid. You just go up and over them. So it's like, all right, that was it. They don't get in the way. And there's so much. The one thing about flying an airplane, I imagine, is that you've got loads of room to maneuver into. When you're on a road and there's cars coming towards you, you've got a road. You're on the road. So you can't go too far off the road. You're on the road. When you're in the air, you just go way up to the left. And the plane's going to go past, isn't it? There we go. It's hard to hit planes in this. You have to try hard. You actually have to aim for them because there's so much air to fly through. So and again, there's a few nice little touches here, and some of the screens are quite funny in it because obviously there's one when you crash and stuff like that. If you do crash, I don't think you ever will. And I suppose it's just a bit of a throwback to a duller kind of game that we haven't seen for a while, and thankfully hadn't. It wasn't welcome. It wasn't a kind welcome back. This wasn't a return of form for some person that's been away for a few years and come back to a welcoming committee. No, this was a few people chanting and shouting and throwing fruit at the airport and get lost. We never wanted you here in the first place. This is Trump's visit, another visit. He's come back for a second visit. And we didn't bring out the nice biscuits first time. We definitely ain't bringing them out again. I think the key thing here is add a shadow, you stupid game design idiot.
Yeah.
Add a shadow to the aeroplane.
Not to anything.
Yeah, just a shadow. Shadows are important on a game when you're in the air, because that means it really feels like you're in the air. Yeah. And it wouldn't have been hard because it's not like you simply add, it would have been easy to do. You could have done that with characters. I'm sure there's a million ways you could have done it. You didn't though, did you? So it just means that it looks stupid and it doesn't feel like you're in the air. So what you end up with is a floaty, boring headache. And my only compliment here is that the instruction manual, which is designed like an old newspaper, is really cool. I loved the instruction manual and the way they laid it out because it's done like a really old newspaper. It's really themed. They've really thought about it. Whoever they hired to do that, clearly in a different league to the people that made this game, because the instruction and everything else, and we'll put the link to the show notes. It's a really cool bit of design, that. Everything else, shit on toast. How about you?
Yeah. Do you know this is, what's his face? What's his name? Steve Cartwright. He did the Hacker games and the other one he did, Aliens, the American Aliens. And he did this. There you go. Raster bars and the odd object do not a racing game make. That's
no.
Really in it. I like the idea of an aerial pole position. There could be something in there, but no. You just feel like you're floating over light and dark greens or browns and greys, whatever, whilst an ear shredding whine wends its way into your ears. You press fire button, he goes, oh.
Yeah.
Kept making press fire. Oh. It's like, stop it. What does this fire button do? It just makes your plane sound depressed.
Stupid game.
The controls are leaden. You never feel like you're actually flying. And whilst the sprites are nice, I guess, they in no way fit with the raster landscape coming at you.
No.
They're just, nothing gels. Those sprites that actually mark out the sides of the track, they don't fit. No. Nothing fits. The pictures when you get flying at the plane, it's quite amusing. The bit that did make me laugh, because it reminded me of Clumsy Colin, was the sprite animation when you get flung out as well, because it's dead overdone. It's like,
oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, God. It's like, okay.
No.
But again, clunky loading. Did yours, when it was loading, every time it popped up a new screen, you go, bah, 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 or something? I was like, what's it doing?
Just got carried away with itself. There's so much loading in it. It's painful.
Yeah, another one. Awful music, sound effects crap. There's no correlation between the speed of the raster bars and the trackside markers. They move at different speeds. So that's you've got two different things coming at you to try and work out what speed you're at. It's like this. No, they're on the ground, so they'd move the same speed as the raster bars would. But like you said, there's no shadow, so there's no connection. Nothing. It's just a float. Everything's float. It's awful, horrible. So just that, the naffness of the main game, it all combined to have me turn this off pretty fast. I like racing games, really do. This could have been quite interesting. And as you said, it's dead easy just to avoid everything. Just fly up. Fly up and turn left or right when you need to. Just fly up and turn left or right when you need to. If you want a bit of a laugh, press the fire button every now and then. You go, oh. That's it. But this really wasn't for me. Geebee Air Rally. No, crap. Really bad. Well, there we go. That's 3 crappers. After a really good start.
Crap. Crap.
Yeah. So there we go. It's been a long
We haven't
part.
had a triple crap treat for a while, have we? That's been a...
No, usually something's been breaking the monotony, but 2 commando crappers and a crappy pole position knockoff.
Flying pole position.
Flying pole position. Howard, you've done it again. It's like, no, you haven't. No. Why would he be in a plane with his best friends talking pie? No.
No.
Anyway, there we go. We're going to go away and take a break. I think we need it after those crap nightmares. And we'll be back in a bit. We're going to look at some albums that were coming out in May 1988. So please stay with us.
The novel Escape from the Commodore 64 by David Hearn is out now. Growing up in the 80s is a chore for Sarah, who feels misunderstood by her parents and badgered by Reese, her bothersome brother who incessantly prattles on about his treasured computer games. When Reese tells her one of the games tried to pull him inside the computer, she laughs off his fanciful fib. She waggles the joystick to disprove his fairy tale and is pulled into the computer. Now trapped in games she'd never had any interest in playing, how can she possibly beat them? With the help of feisty Nell, another trapped player, can Sarah find her way back home, or is it game over? An evil madman, a hostile planet, bloodthirsty robots, a never-ending throng of karate experts, and relentless digital soldiers will do their best to ensure Sarah never escapes. Available from Amazon and all good online retailers, find out if there's a way out of the beige bread bin of betrayal for Sarah in Escape from the Commodore 64.
Are you keeping up with the Commodore? Yes, the Commodore's keeping up with you.
And we're back. We've got albums to go out. There's a few albums here that came out this month. Let's do the number ones first of all. Our first one is back in at number 1. I think we've seen this before at number 1. I think we probably have.
Yeah.
This is Tango in the Night by Fleetwood Mac. Your favourites?
Yeah, not a fan. Fleetwood Mac.
Not a fan? No,
No,
not a fan.
still not. This is their 14th album. We said it when it came out back in 1987. This must be a CD re-release or something.
Don't
Which
think
is
it is.
Pretty impressive.
It's the same release. It just kept going. Their albums never get released. They just keep going. Like Rumours is still in this charts now.
Well, like we said before, it's the most successful lineup of Lindsay Buckingham, Mick Fleetwood, Christy McVie, John McVie, and Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
So.
I think, didn't we see, was it Everywhere we saw recently? That was the single.
Yeah.
So it's just when they release a new single, people go, oh, that's 5 really good songs. I'm just going to go buy it now. And they go back to number 1. So that was the first 2 weeks. That was knocked off in the 3rd week by Love Sexy by Prince.
Yeah, yes, the 10th studio album from the diminutive Duke of Funk.
From that week.
From that week, yeah.
The 10th studio album that week he produced.
It got quite mixed reviews, though, actually, that one. It wasn't his most popular one. In fact, it was the least popular one he ever did.
Really?
Yeah.
What tracks were off it?
Well, it says it was the least successful album since 1981. That's actually the number of albums he released. So it's his least successful album since album 1981.
which was that year.
Yeah.
He just couldn't be stopped.
He cannot be stopped.
Prince, we don't have enough
the end.
there's not enough vinyl in the world. Stop making stuff.
But yeah, it's got Alphabet Street on it, which we looked at in the singles, didn't we? This one. There's not a lot of other big. I think they only released 2 singles off that. I think. Don't quote me on that, but
yeah, because that's all they had time for. Before we released another album.
Well, yeah, another album came out a week later. Yeah.
Absolutely. Back in at number 1 for the 4th week, Tango in the Night.
Bizarre.
Mac went back up. Told you, you can't keep them back. Once they start selling, they sell.
Yeah, people like it.
People loved it. Anyway, there you go. And finally, for the last week, we had Night Flight. Various artists. What the hell was this?
Yeah, this was a compilation album, Soul for the Flight of Flying. It's got George Benson, Randy Crawford, Alexander O'Neill, and Luther Vandross on it, amongst many others.
Wow, there's names to set your watch by.
Yeah. You can fly first class anytime.
The album's so smooth, the needle can't pick it up.
Exactly, yeah. There's no grooves on it.
It's just looking at it. It's like it's just flat.
The album's so groovy, it's smooth. Actually, should put that on the box.
It's so smooth, it's got no groove. Got all the groove.
It's all the groove.
Anyway, albums. Let's get back into them. First of May, in at number 14, "Life's Too Good" by the Sugar Cubes. It was until you released this album.
Yeah, their debut album from the pinch-faced honking snow geisha. Not my cup of Earl Grey, that.
No, you're not a big Bjork fan, are you?
No, not really. I don't like the Sugar Cubes particularly. I remember that single was here for a while. Oh, it wasn't supposed to happen. Yeah, and I think that's what they're talking about, their actual single.
Oh, yeah, just the fact they got a record deal.
Yeah, record deal. Yeah, someone liked it.
In at number 30, "Aliens Ate My Buick" by Thomas Dolby.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Dobley. I didn't realise he was English. I don't know why I didn't realise English with a name like Thomas Dolby, but he is.
I don't know, it's not, but it could be American. I don't know. I listened to the first two tracks off this. It's hard to believe it's the same album or artist. It's really, they're really weird. One's like just an 80s sort of pop band, and the other's like some weird art installation piece. It's dead weird. It's really odd. Yeah. But not my cup of tea, not my thing.
No, I can honestly say I've never listened to anything of his on purpose. So
no, I did earlier, and I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, was it recorded in Dobley?
It was actually. I could hear both sides of the record.
Thomas Dolby, NR. He's got a noise reduction, so he just presses his head. He reduces his hiss. He's always hissing.
No one used to press that button. No one pressed that button on the stereo.
The muffle button, which made everything muffled.
Have you recorded this with NR? Wow, I thought that was good. No.
Never use the NR button. It's muffle mode.
Those stupid buttons you used to have on stereos and stuff. Extra things they had. What does that mean? What does that do?
Switch on the Dolby button. Why?
We haven't got a Dolby system. It'll sound better. No, it won't.
It doesn't sound better. It sounds muffled. I used to have that on my Walkman. I had a Dolby mode. It was like it's the least used mode that was ever on that Walkman. I'm never going to use that.
Yeah, new tech added to stuff to make you think, oh yeah, like they would sell you video recorders and stuff with extra stuff on it. Like,
yeah,
I mean, we were lucky at audio dub on yours, but how many people used the audio dub feature?
Not many. No, you could even add a ~2, so you could just watch an entire film in ~2.
Why would you do that?
You wouldn't. They just reached a level of pointless additions to that particular video. That Ferguson Video Star had. It was because it was all, at one point when they were selling, it was all about the features, wasn't it? So
yeah,
they
exactly.
Just bombarded that thing. They threw the feature book at that one. It did everything.
I mean, what films did you watch last night? Oh, I watched Predator, Rambo, Commando. And,
how did you do that?
How did you do all that? I just watched it in ×2. It was great.
It's stupid. I mean, I remember the remote control was massive. It looked like a scientific calculator. It had that many bloody buttons on it.
Yeah. Did we use one of those remote controls to start the apocalypse in our film?
No, actually, no. That was it. Was at Ferguson, but it wasn't one of the Ferguson Video Stars. That was Rick's. He had that flap on it, didn't it? That pointless flap. Yeah. So it was a weird remote control actually, because because normally they're kind of a sort of a mobile phone type, aren't they? They're kind of the portrait,
long and thin. Yeah.
His was landscape.
His was wide and fat. No. I'm not saying
it. Yes, it was. yes, it was.
There we go. Number 60. This is Our Art by the Soup Dragons. This is
debut
Our
album.
Art.
Yeah, debut album from them. Do you like the Soup Dragons?
Nah, not really.
Well, this is different to the later Soup Dragons, because they underwent a sound change apparently from an indie rock sound. This is after this album, to the rock dance crossover sound. Apparently, it was due to the fact that they at one point had no drummer, so they bought a drum sampler and then began experiment with the release of things like that, and then the album Love God came out. I think that's where.
I think we've talked about it before. And we tried to remember what the big single was, isn't it? I'm so on the loose.
Yeah, that's the one.
Did they do "I'm Free"? Was that them?
I'm free to do what I want.
Was that them?
No, want them. No, I don't know. Was it?
Was that?
Yeah, it might have been actually. Yeah, it was. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah,
I think it is them. Yeah.
Or was that Primal Scream? Was it?
Hold me. Could be.
I get them confused. They all sounded the same.
Exactly. I do. Yeah. Exactly.
In Spiral Carpets, that Manchester scene, they're just all blended into one.
Well, yeah, but they're from Scotland.
Haze.
But,
Yeah, but the sound, but you couldn't tell they were from Scotland.
No.
Yeah, but they had
you
that
couldn't,
Manchester scene, didn't they? Is what I'm saying.
No. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and
Blur were part of the Manchester scene, but they were from Chelmsford.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really remember this Soup Dragons track because it's in the film The World's End.
No, I just remember it because that was always the signal to go get a beer at Gullies.
I remember when it came on. Yeah, come off the dance floor. The Soup Dragons
time for a beer. The Manchester bit's coming on. Time to have a drink.
Isn't the one that goes, we want to be free to do what we want to do at the beginning?
I think that's the one,
I
think so.
Yeah, it is that.
Unless it's Primal Scream, but which case, who cares? Anyway, 8th of May, straight in at number 2, kept off by Fleetwood Mac, is Stay on These Roads by Aha.
Stay on these roads, lads.
Stay off some horse.
The third album from our chirpy Norwegian trio.
Yes. It's all right, this album. It's probably the weakest album so far. It doesn't have the massive songs of the first, nor the overall moodiness of the second.
They were still. Did they manage to ever shrug the kind of teen heartthrob thing that they got cast into at the beginning? Because they seemed to spend forever trying to get rid of it, didn't they? And
this was where they were starting to move out of vogue. But they're doing videos in here with far too much. I think we looked at Stay on These Roads recently and had far too much leather and bright blue jeans in the video, which is never a good combo. Black leather and bright blue jeans. Not good. In at number 3, Stronger Than Pride by Sade or Sade.
Sade.
You're a Sade fan, aren't you?
Yes, I do like Sade, and I do like some of her things. This is the third studio album. Christine McKenna of the Los Angeles Times wrote about this album. The 9 songs on Stronger Than Pride add up to one long plea of desire. As the album makes its way up the charts, as it surely will, armies of love-struck men will no doubt dream of losing themselves in Sade's quiet storm of passion.
Can you try and do that in the voice of what's-her-face from The Fog? Stevie Wayne?
This is Stevie Wayne. I've got a few tunes for you. Worst Stevie Wayne impersonation ever.
That was terrible.
I don't pretend to do a good Stevie Wayne. I'm no expert at doing impersonations of Stevie Wayne.
That's true,
contrary to what you might think.
This didn't make me get a quiet storm of passion, I have to say.
No, it's all right. It's all right, isn't it? But it's more singing like this. If you like that kind of thing, great. But more of that. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was that storms of passion are going to be out there. It's good, but it's not that good.
No, it's not. Number 9, More Dirty Dancing from the original soundtrack. So they've just got more songs. I'm sure there weren't that many songs in the original.
There's loads in it, isn't there?
For another album's worth?
Yeah, there's loads of bits where they're dancing and the scene's on for a very short amount of time. They've probably just raided it for every bit of music they could.
Probably, yeah. This did prompt me to think, though, what are the dirtiest of dances?
Well, yes, because, of course, I don't know if is it salsa dancing they're doing in this or some kind of variation of salsa, I think.
Is that what they consider the dirtiest of dancing?
I think it's because they're close-up, intimate dances, salsa and things like that. Paso, I think Argentine tango is kind of quite of a close, intense dance. I would never know because I'm no expert at any of those. I tended to keep people the hell away from me if I was dancing around a dance floor. I was a very large man with long, straggly hair and a wild flinging of the arm. Could be very dangerous for me. So I think I was more dangerous dancing than dirty dancing. But and I was probably quite grubby as well. So maybe I was a bit more mucky dancing. Mucky dangerous, really.
Mucky dancing.
Mucky dangerous dancing. Yeah.
Mucky dancing, the not so well-known follow-up. Dirty
I've been
dancing.
trying to think because obviously, when you the dirtiest of dances, but the dancing that I know, because obviously I don't know enough about ballroom dances or anything to know if a foxtrot's dirtier than a rumba or whatever. But I'm going by the dances that I've seen. So Goth Crumbles, that's not particularly dirty. But there was that,
off the floor.
But drunk middle-aged divorcee, they can get quite, they do that kind of, what they call it, was it a slut drop they call it or something like that? Yeah, they do a lot of that on the old dance floor, something like that.
I don't know, but twerking's quite sexy.
Twerking,
dirty,
yeah.
Should I say, not sexy? I don't find it sexy. It's not dirty.
It's done by the right thing. It's got to be, not everyone can twerk.
Yeah, not people weren't happy when I did it at the last wedding I went to.
No. Then you had your I please anyone pants on, and
absolutely with the vertical slit.
I know that she choked on a pie, didn't she? That old lady that was there.
She did.
Unfortunate that. She did. She went. One choked on her dentures, the other one choked on a pie, but, you know.
And the last one had a stroke, but she couldn't reach. Hey!
Hey! Anyway, I'm not sure, because the only dirty dancing I've seen is when people get drunk at clubs like Gulliver's in Grimsby, and even then, I won't say it was dirty. I think it was just more kind of clumsy and awkward for everybody.
Grubby.
When people start getting off with each other on a dance floor, is that not a little bit awkward for everyone? I think it is.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it is. There's nothing more disappointing than looking at somebody get, because people think they're kissing passionately when they're drunk on a dance floor like that. They're not. It just looks like two people trying to suck the pattern off each other's ribs. So it's not nice. Not nice at all.
It's not. Some people might call that kind of thing savage amusement.
They
which
might.
is a number 18 album by the Scorpions.
The Scorpions. I can't look at them the same way after the single they had.
No.
This is their 10th studio album. 10.
How did they get to 10?
I don't know. It's by the German Masters of Poodle Perm Hair Metal, I've put.
Yeah.
That's what they might want to be branded as.
Yep.
Good musicians, they are. But they were still booing a support act when they came on, apparently, when they were doing live shows. Traditional Euro blend of hair metal, heavy on arpeggios, and chug.
Which sounds like a dwarven tavern.
It does. The arpeggiated chug. It does.
Come on, Gilby. Let's get in the arpeggiated chug.
Come here. They all start singing and washing the pots. Handy bunch to have around, though.
They are, yes. It's good to have them there.
Yes.
In at number 31 is Scenes from the South Side by Bruce Hornsby and the Meatballs.
That's what they're forever known to me as now.
Meatball
heads. That's all they are, is meatball heads. That's all I can see now. And that's all I'm ever going to see.
Yep, it's all you'll ever know.
I can't undo that. I can't undo what you've done now. That's it then, just meatball heads. Meat hair is the way ahead for them.
Number 40 was Blind by the Icicle Works.
Yeah, fourth album by these guys. Apparently it's English New Wave.
No, I listened to it.
No, I've ever heard anything by him, and I checked a quick check on this track, and it was dull blandcore.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. Not for me. Really dull.
No. Icky Licky Works, not for me.
Yeah, no. 15th of May, we've already talked about it. In at number 1, Love Sexy by Prince.
We did.
His 5th album this week. At number 8, now that's what I call Quite Good by the House Martins. House Martins? House Martins.
House Martin. Do you see what they did there? Yeah.
I did.
It won't help them, though, because it's a compilation. It's the best of. Post-breakup best of album, or greatest hits album. I'd say best of, because I don't think any of their hits are that great, so
no,
I don't think they deserve to call it a greatest hits album.
No, and I'd even sort of bulk at the term best of.
Yeah, true, yeah. House Martins. Isn't that a bird, a House Martin?
Yes, it is, yes. Part of the...
So maybe we've got it all wrong. Maybe it's actually just a collection of songs sung by various different kind of birds. Wow, that's what I call quite good.
Thank you very much. I'm here all week. In at number 18 is Open Up and Say
yeah,
by Poison.
Classic Poison, yeah. Good tracks on there. Nothing but a good time, obviously, we spoke about last time. Every rose has its thorn is on there. It does have that on there.
Just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song.
Yeah. Which is obviously what they use in Bill and Ted's, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that bit. Yeah.
The original front cover of the album, which featured model Bambi, that's her name, dressed as a luminous red demon with a protruding tongue, caused controversy among parental groups. The band changed the cover so that only the model's eyes were visible. Now, I thought I'm getting a real Spinal Tap vibe from that straight away.
Yeah, the
album cover's too sexy.
Such a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's it does make me laugh. It is a proper Spinal Tap vibe.
What's wrong? What's wrong with being sexy? Sexist.
Oh,
okay. At number 27 is Odyssey by Yngwie J. Malmsteen.
Fourth album from Mr. Malmsteen. Do you like Mr. Malmsteen? I'm not going to say his first name because it's too tongue-tie-y.
Yngwie. No,
you like.
I'm not a big fan of Yngwie Malmsteen. I listened to the title track from this single. I can't remember what it's called. But there's so many whittles. It's just full of whittling. It's just.
Yes.
It's like, stop it.
He is a very, very fast player.
He's a massive whittler.
Player. He is, but he's a master of certain techniques.
He's very good.
Yeah. Very clever. Very clever.
But whittling's not for me.
Steve Huey at AllMusic gave the album 2 stars out of 5, calling it a more subdued, polished collection seemingly designed for mainstream radio airplay and that it shows little difference in approach from Malmsteen's previous output. However, he did praise Joe Lynn Turner's vocals and Malmsteen's guitar work, but remarked that the latter sounds constrained and passionless, due in part to his recovery from a near-fatal car accident in 1987. And I put there, well, near-fatal accidents generally do hamper your ability to play really effective guitar.
They do. Yeah. Surprisingly, you managed to get over that well if it was near-fatal.
He's a master of, is sort of, what do you call it?
Whittling.
No, it's the proper name for it, isn't there? It's
whittling.
It's a picking technique, isn't it? But he's a master at that, though.
I'm not knocking his ability. He's a very good guitarist, but
don't, because he'll come after you. He's a real dangerous guy.
He will whittle all over me.
He'd be outside your house right now. You'll hear him. He speaks like that's how he talks. He talks in. He can't speak actual English. He speaks in arpeggiated guitar speed.
1,000 words a minute.
He does, yeah.
You have to sort of record him, slow him down, and then play him at 2 times speed on your old Ferguson video style, maybe, or half speed.
He'll alternatively pick you to death. That's what he does. His picks are steel. Picks are pure steel.
He has them between each knuckle. In number 30 is The Sea of Love by Adventures.
Oh, God, did you listen to this?
I did. Thanks. Thanks for linking to that.
MOR blandness of the bland kind.
It was awful. Rubbish. Not good at all. In at number 68, He's the DJ and I'm the Rapper by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Print.
Yeah, we mentioned this when they did the singles, didn't we? It's their first big album that came out of that. It is their first one of that style, of their style. Jazzy Jeff's style and Fresh Prince obviously is Will Smith as we know him now. But I quite like the stuff from back then. You know, Girls of the World ain't nothing, but there was a bit of fun and a bit of crazy. If you think of the opening of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that's the kind of style that this album is. It's all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people still like that. This is the story all about, it's all that kind of vibe. So if you like that kind of style, that's exactly what it is. And of course, Jazzy Jeff is in The Fresh Prince, and so is the Fresh Prince in that TV show, strangely enough.
Weird that the Fresh Prince would be in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Got his own TV show and everything, yeah.
He did well for himself.
Fresh Prince on Your Bell End is probably the porno version of that.
Fingerprints.
Fingerprints on Your Bell End.
Absolutely. Can we dust? I'm not dusting for those. I don't care how he died. I'm not dusting for prints there.
Tickle it with the brush. No.
Call that a brush? What are you doing here, Crocodile Dundee?
Oh, you've ruined the fingerprint. It's expanded. It looks like it's made by a giant now. What have you been doing? Stop tickling it with that brush. You did it.
I can see every individual wall. Wall and whirl.
For God's sake, move on to Tracy Chapman, please.
Okay. Number 76, Tracy Chapman with Tracy Chapman.
Yeah, your favourite kind of thing when they name the album after themselves.
Absolutely. And then have a monochrome picture of themselves looking down to a corner.
If that album cover doesn't sum up that album for you.
Yeah, it looks
don't get me wrong, good album, but
looks like the Terence Trent D'Arby and the Smith and Morrissey album cover.
Does.
It's just
you called it.
Yeah, like that's how you get a big album. You just have a picture yourself looking down.
Yeah, lots of big Tracy Chapman tracks on that particular album that they've all come out over the years. I always quite like the sound, really, I suppose. And learning to play at least one of her tracks on an acoustic guitar, along with More Than Words by Extreme and Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, is the guaranteed early guitar repertoire of the party knobhead who needs to be sent to the toilet. If you ever come across them at a rate of knots, do that. Make sure you do it.
Yes, they do.
Just send them to the toilet. We had it once at a party we were at where a guy came who armed with a guitar, and you know what's going to happen. They're going to try and charm somebody with that thing. It's summed up nicely in Animal House, the film where character Bluto comes down the stairs and the guy's saying, the chicken, and he just grabs the child and smashes it to pieces. One of those guys, we were at a party where one of those guys appeared, and he came up to us and immortally said the words, has anyone got a plectrum? To which we were instantly enraged by both the fact that he had a crap acoustic guitar in one hand and he turned up without a plectrum, which, I mean, you don't have to play it with a plectrum, I know, but we were enraged. I mean, I was partially enraged, but you were fully enraged to the point where you got that mad you just sent him to the toilet.
Just kept telling him,
said, you need the toilet. And he's like, I don't think you need the toilet. Get to the toilet. He actually went. He went to the toilet, didn't he?
He did. Not one of my
later on, he was
moments,
outside in the garden where there was a someone had set a small outside fire barbecue type thing, and there he was strumming the guitar. I have never wanted to smash a music instrument with someone's head so bad. But in the end, I ended up throwing 2 jacket potatoes at the kitchen window and filling the...
We did, didn't we? Yes, that was a good party.
And punching the cake. But there you go. It's a whole different... that party did not end in the way we expected it to. And what was our motto for that? You shouldn't have invited us. That was the... that's what we said.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, shouldn't have invited us.
We got asked the question, why did you do that? And we were like, you shouldn't have invited us. If you don't want those things to happen at your party, do not invite us, because that's going to happen.
We're much
just
calmer
an interesting
these days.
aside. We don't do that now. No, it was years ago.
It was many years ago. We were, young and needed the money.
Wild, yeah. A bit wild, yeah.
22nd of May. And at number 7 is The First of a Million Kisses by the Fairground Attraction.
Yeah, one hit wonders. And that album has one hit. And it's a wonder that it ever got any further than that.
Yeah.
So,
but Twiki was not amused.
No, Wittering Load of Arse is what it is.
Indeed. Number 11, Bullet from a Gun by Derek B.
Yes, that's a genuinely brilliant album, that is. Really good. British rap at its best, or British rap at its early best. R.I.P. Derek B, sadly.
Number 24, the unpleasantly mentioned Ram It Down by Judas Priest, which I'm hoping is some kind of toilet reference. After a particularly bad Saturday night.
Well, it's going to take them a good while to get them studded underpants off. Because that's going to be sore, isn't it? We've said it many times, but they are going to be sore. They're stud socks as well. They wear studded socks, studded underpants, studded vests.
Yeah, it's just the studs are just going to catch on the studs. There's going to be magnetism. It's all bad. Yeah.
Never mind the leather, the smell of the leather as well. Wet leather's an unpleasant smell.
It is.
It's horrible.
Especially sort of interior groin wet leather.
Exactly.
That's
groin
not going to
stink.
smell pleasant. Imagine the smell of that after a gig.
Exactly. No one would want to go near them. It's like the, do you know in the Chernobyl disaster, all the firemen that wore the suits, they're still in the bottom of Chernobyl. They're down there, dangerously radioactive. Same with all the Judas Priest leather-studded pants. They're in some room somewhere. No one goes in there. To go in there would be fatal.
Absolutely.
It'd be a fatal thing.
You'd lose your eyebrows immediately.
That album's their 11th studio album. English. Now, why didn't I realise that Judas Priest were English? I don't know why I didn't. No, for some reason, I just assumed they were American. I don't really know why. But it was their final Judas Priest album with producer Tom Allen for 30 years.
Wow.
He came back later on to do a live album, and then he did their 2018 album, Firepower. They're still going.
They're still trying to take the pants off.
They're still going. They're still trying to get exactly. They're stuck, glued on now, like underpants on an Action Man. Can't get them off.
They're just jammed on with smegma.
Oh, there's a word that's unpleasant. No matter how in what context, that's it.
Yeah.
Ruined.
Sorry.
Smeggy glue pants.
Absolutely. The studs have been worn down to
the nub.
To the nub. There's barely anything else in there, just flat metal.
That's the name of the next album.
It's the name of their pint that they released, their beer that they released. Have a get yourself a pint of flat metal.
Yes. Ugh.
Room temperature.
Get lost smeggy pants.
Number 81, The New Order by Testament. What's going on with these bands?
Goodness me. Second studio album, thrash metal.
Yeah.
Sounds exactly as you imagine it would.
I can imagine. I can imagine it sounding like Angry Dwarves.
It just sounds exactly as you, if you imagine, in your mind, just think the words thrash metal, and whatever you're hearing is exactly what that is.
Yeah, I thought as much.
Yep.
29th of May, number 11, Out of Order by Rod Stewart. Yes, he is, by releasing another album.
This is his 15th studio album. 15. Jeez. 15 albums. In Brazil, this album was certified gold in 1994. Brazilian gold, also known as South American toot.
Well, but isn't Brazilian gold a type of coffee or cocaine? It sounds like it should be. Either will keep you up all night and give you a headache in the morning.
Yes, and I bet he wakes up every day thinking, why didn't I call my album Brazilian Gold instead of Out of Order? It's a way better name.
That's because, what's the face? Spandau Ballet had copyrighted the word gold.
Yeah. Brazilian Gold. Don't
try and sing in a sort of Portuguese
not
accent. Sorry.
That. I wouldn't be able to do that. By the way, I did check in to see how many of the songs on that Rod Stewart album he actually wrote, and he wrote quite a lot of them. Or co-wrote quite a lot of them, yeah. Well, because nowadays he just sings cover songs, really. But back then he actually did write them.
Pub. They're trying to get him out. He's been there forever. Yeah. He won't leave. Number 13, Tougher Than Leather. Not Judas Priest leather. With Run DMC.
Number 4 album, or the 4th album from these dudes. So,
yeah, prolific.
Yeah, not as popular as its other ones, but it still went platinum.
Yeah, it would do. They were massive at this point, weren't they? They'd had the Aerosmith collaboration, hadn't they?
They had by this point. Yeah, this is way after that. And I think this is also now, this is seen as kind of a seminal classic hip-hop album now, and very underrated at the time. I'm not into the Run DMC stuff of that time. I know the tracks I like, but I don't know many more to be able to give a very accurate explanation of what that's like. I don't know.
Can't tell you anything. Number 16 is OU812 by Van Halen.
It is, yeah, their 8th studio album, second album to feature Sammy Hagar on the old vocals.
You'd actually written that it's pronounced OU812. When I first saw it, I was like, hour 812? What's that all about?
Yeah, you got to just say what you see, remember, Mr. Chips.
True, especially with Sammy Hagar. He does that all the time with people. He's just doing it all around his house when he wants to pint or anything. Just says what he sees.
He talks in like numerics and single letters. It's how he communicates with Will.
Are you okay?
R-U-B-C, yeah. Are you okay? R-U-B-C. F-U-N-E-M-N-X. If you've got ham and eggs.
It's a two Ronnie sketch in it.
Very much so, yes. I actually prefer the album before this one.
VFX.
VFX. That's Hammy. That's Hammy Hagar. Good, Hammy.
Hammy Hagar.
That's the hamster
version. The brother.
God, Hammy. How you doing, Hammy? So Hammy and Sammy together are one person, I think. Anyway. I much prefer 5150 to OU812, but
that's 5150. You're not saying it right. It means something.
That's was it not the address of Eddie Van Halen? I think that's the number of his original house or something like that. I can't remember.
Like maybe. Finally, number 58, Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche.
Third studio album from them. It's a concept album and a rock opera. A ropera. It's a ropera. It follows the story of Nicky, a drug addict who becomes disillusioned with the corrupt society of his time and reluctantly becomes involved with a revolutionary group as an assassin of political leaders.
As you do.
Wow. Yeah. Did you listen to it at all?
No, I did not.
It's Iron Maiden light.
Yeah, I mean, I have listened to some Queensryche in the past, but I wasn't going to listen to this.
Yeah, don't.
There's too much. I mean, we've had Queensryche, Van Halen, Rod Stewart, Testament, Judas Priest. There's too many. Ingrid J. Malmsteen, Poison.
Yeah.
So Scorpions.
It's a lot of hair and leather.
Scorpions. It's just too much. Yeah. What's going on? It really is a hairy, leathery time.
Husks. Hairy leather husks.
Absolutely.
It's a husky time. There's leather eggs everywhere, and they've all been looking over them. That's why.
Absolutely.
They've hatched.
In order to get the fingerprint off the bell end.
Exactly. It just hatches. That's
it. There we go. That's your albums. That's not a good lot, is it? That was not a good month. I mean, there may be a couple that were okay, but...
It's Metal May.
Yeah, it really is, yeah. With the studs on the inside. There we go. That's your albums. We're going to come back in a little bit. We've got another 4 games to get through, so let's get to them and see if they're any good. So we'll see you in a bit.
A strawberry movie ice lolly and a couple of screwballs to our show sponsor davidhearnwriter.com, where you will find a remarkable collection of audiobooks, bargain books, ebooks and more. David once drank a tub of bathwater to get someone out of his bathroom. He's a brilliant author as well. Check out this audio chunk of his latest, Escape from the Commodore 64.
You can't be taking these here cars without some form of payment. Kane walked over to them and rocked back and forth on his heels. Sarah noticed how much he moved the same way she had in the game with the zappy robots. She expected him to somersault at any moment. Well, Kane said, tapping his foot impatiently. Sarah slipped her hands into her pockets, a stance she normally took when she was preparing for an argument. Her hands hit something cold and smooth. To her surprise, her blood ran cold and excitement prickled behind her ribs. Her features lit up in a classic light bulb moment. What about diamonds?
You see, I told you it was good. Now do you believe me? To grab one for yourself and indeed any of the other works from David, visit davidhearnwriter.com. That's David, Hearne writer.com. It's as easy as typing in some words.
And we're back once again. We are back. And we've got, as I said, 4 more games to come up in this section. So let's waste no time. Let's get into them. Graham, did you enjoy your time with the Card Sharks?
Well, I kind of did, actually. Accolade this. The graphics are by Mimi Doggett here. Title screen was Mimi Doggett. And I got the credits down as designed by Mike Lorenzen. Some of the graphics are also by Richard Atanki. Atanki. And the music was by Ed Bogus. They're kind of the Accolade gang, really, aren't they? Do that.
Mm-hmm.
So from the instructions, okay, so you've got the itch to play some cards, maybe a little poker, a little blackjack, or even a game of hearts. But all of your card-playing cronies are out of town, and you definitely don't want to play another boring computer card game. Complete with the proverbial invisible dealer. You want to see your opponent eye to eye. What are you going to do? Bunky? Fly to Vegas? I don't understand that anyway. Relax, save your dough, invite the Card Sharks over. Accolade's Card Sharks is more than just 3 challenging card games on 1 disc. Card Sharks is the first interactive computer card game that allows you to play with and against articular animated characters. Articular is a good word, isn't it?
Is that a word? Should it be articulate?
I don't want to know, but it says articular in their instructions. It could be a typo. No kidding. Just boot up Card Sharks and you're sitting across the felt from some vibrant, funny people with loads of personality. And they won't stink up the joint with stogies. Okay. Just call up Luigi, Milton, and Lady Vanderbilt for a friendly game of hearts. They'll even let you keep score, or maybe you'd like to get into some rapid-fire blackjack. Sam the dealer enjoys a game of 21 almost as much as he enjoys a good joke. And when was the last time you played poker with the world's most powerful leaders? Card Shark comes loaded with 3 varieties of poker and 3 verbose politicians. Accolade's Card Shark game. When your friends fold, the Sharks are ready to play. That's the
Good Lord.
So this is a multi-card game, essentially, or a card game compendium where you can play 3 variations of poker, blackjack, and a game called Hearts, essentially.
Yes,
now, I don't know a great deal about any of those games, apart from the couple of the variations of poker. And what I'm not going to do is now go into a full-on explanation of all the different types of card game that there are. I actually didn't play them all. I had a quick go at Hearts, didn't quite get it, but I didn't really have the time to dedicate to it. And they all play out the kind of same way. So the graphics on this are kind of seen. It reminded me of another card game that we played, or another casino game that we played, but they're all kind of the players you're up against are on the back row, if you like.
Oh, that was the one with Shifty Susie.
Yeah, was it Miami Dice? Was it?
Might have been, yeah, with the dodgy sort of hand movement.
Yeah, the hand shaking. And this one's got like crazy banana hands in this one. But anyway.
I love the arms in this. They're ace. They're proper Robocop in.
But if you imagine, so you basically, the choices you get in this are the kind of game you want to play, and then you can choose the people you're going to play it with. And it's actually a game that's specifically designed for solo play for these kind of card games, which is quite nice. So it isn't trying to do some kind of crappy version. It's actually trying to give them some character to play against. And that's quite interesting. So the graphics in this, obviously you go through the selection screen, you get to choose there's some character drawings of cartoonish character drawings of the characters that you play. And then when you do get to the game, depending on what game you've chosen, you'll see the kind of the people that your opposition is sort of over on the back wall, as it were, but facing you, sort of sat down opposite on the table. The main area of the game in the middle, in casino style, and then obviously the dealer at the bottom, and your sort of, the part that you play, or the parts and the cards and the things that you have, depending on what game you play, are sort of dealt across the table. So it plays out in that kind of way. It's not massively graphically intensive. That's kind of what it is. A lot of the nuts and bolts in this has gone into how you actually play out the game. So out of the 3 poker types, which is, I think there's 5 card draw, 7 card stud, and Texas Hold'em. I was most familiar with Texas Hold'em. I've never really played a lot of poker. I've never really played Hearts, which is a game where I think you've got to basically get rid of the hearts. You're not allowed to divest them. I think what we tend to find in the UK is we have other names for these games always. So apart from poker, but there's games like Queenie, there's games like Rummy, and there's loads of other card games that have variations, and they're probably maybe similar to these. And so that's what they are. They all use a standard 52 card deck. And with the exception of blackjack, where you can play over multiple decks, of course, which you can do in any casino as well. I wouldn't recommend it, because that's just, if you want to watch your money get burned through, watch people play blackjack. I've been in casino in Vegas, and I can tell you, blackjack and the roulette, aside from the slot machines, blackjack and the roulette are the fastest I've ever seen people lose money in my life. No, thousands in what felt like seconds. It was ridiculous. But anyway, so I had a game of poker in this, and I played against Margaret Thatcher, Gorbachev, and I forget who the third character I picked was.
It's Reagan. Ronald Reagan, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ronald Reagan. Well, you get to pick out 6 characters, don't you? So you can pick 3 out of the 6. And I didn't pick Reagan for the other one. I can't remember who I picked now. It wasn't a political leader, I don't think. Yeah, could have been. They all have their own characteristics, their own style. They all come out with funny little one-liners and quirky stuff to keep the game interesting. But essentially what you're doing is you're playing poker or whatever variation of card game you've chosen against them. They're not stupid, and the AI isn't sort of... It actually starts simpler, and they get harder and harder and harder as you get into it, which is quite good. I quite like that. So there's a nice gentle in. So the first few hands of poker you'll play are not super intense. You're not paying for mega bucks, but you can soon top up quite a pot of money, which is always kind of interesting if you do. So I played Texas Hold'em, went through a game of Texas Hold'em, and obviously, I'm not going to go through how you play poker, but essentially, the game plays out. Obviously, each person plays a hand. You can put in some money as the ante. You can then raise each other, and then eventually you'll get to the point when you see each other's cards, and then you've got to kind of make the best hand you can out of the cards you have, and the cards that are dealt onto the table, and you're looking for pairs, 3 of a kind, and there's a kind of a rating scheme of the varying hands, obviously, as you go up. And if you know that you're onto a good hand, or you think you're onto it, you can try and bluff and keep the game going. That's poker in a nutshell. I don't know about the other variations. Obviously, with blackjack, the idea of that is to get 21 and different variations, and there's different ways people play it. But the actual rules of this game, I think, because the rules are explained in the instructions for all of the games in quite depth, so you wouldn't come at this completely blind. And actually controlling the game, controlling how it works is really easy. So they haven't, made the game controls in classic Accolade way. There's not a lot of controls to the game. That you're just playing the parameters really of what you need to do. So you're making joystick-based choices, essentially, simple choices on a very simple interface. Yep. And then fun stuff happens because they come out of one-liners, their expression changes. They have this wild animation on their arm when they come and pick out the cards. It's a bit banana arm, but it's all part and parcel of the kind of characterization of it. So there's things to like. But that's kind of it, though. It's a one-player card game where you play against multiple variations, and the game difficulty ramps up as it goes. Graphics, I think, are nice. Classic Mimi Doggett style, really. So they're kind of well-drawn characters, and Margaret Thatcher does look very Margaret Thatcher-y, and Gorbachev does look Gorbachevian. They're of their time, obviously. And there's fun to be had here if you like these kind of card games. Like I said, you'd need to like them. You'd need to like these particular card variations as well, which there's plenty to go at, because if you do like them, you're going to want to go and play these, and they're quite fun to play. So what there is here is fun, and it's a very well-designed Accolade card game. There's no denying that. It is what it is. It's got very nice Accolade-style graphics. It loaded pretty quick, really easy controls, a nice simple interface, very visual, decent sort of themed music. It adheres to all of the rules of the games as well. The rules of how these card games play feels very fair. The computer never feels completely advantaged, even though obviously the computer is the one that has all the cards, if you like, for want of a better description. But you never feel unfairly disadvantaged because you're a human in this. It actually just feels quite fun. And there is challenge. The players are quirky. There is some fun dialogue, but they do try and bluff you, and it's quite clever how it works in that way. So as you start to get more into it, it becomes more of a challenge, not just rote numeric observation of cards and different types, but they do kind of have shifty looks at each other, and they lift the cards up and down. There's little animations and little things that make it a little bit more interesting. So I quite liked it for that. I suppose you've got to like these card games to really get much out of this. The dialogue is of its time, but I suppose it sets it aside in terms of its graphics and the way it's laid out and stuff. It's better than that Miami Dice game. It doesn't feel quite as silly as that. It's fun, but not stupid. And it sets out to do exactly what it intends. There's no denying that. This game is just a bit of a left field game for Accolade on the back of some of their other games that have been out. So this one feels like a bit of a, they found this in the, they just, I don't know when they found time to even make it. Designed, it just say copyright 1987 on the game. So maybe it was made a while ago and released. I don't know. So it was novel. I played Texas Hold'em with Maggie Thatcher. It was fun. Like I don't know if it's lasting fun. Wouldn't necessarily be for me, but if you like these kind of games, you would probably find something there. I think there's enough variety in the game types and the skill levels to be able to keep you at it for a bit. A few fun aspects. I enjoyed what I played because it's easy to get into. It didn't rely on a lot of complicated options. It just got you in and on, and you were playing the game. And you could muddle your way through a few good games of Heart if you really felt like it. Would it keep me coming back? No, not really. I don't think so. But I would never have bought it in the first place. So it's likable. It was $9.95, so it's a full price game, but well realised, bug-free, fun for those that want some card games to have a go at. in a sea of crappy sort of poker type, crappy poker games that we've seen and stuff. This is kind of, at least it brings the fun back to it a bit. But what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's Accolade, isn't it? They've done it again. It is they've got that Accolade style. So the characters reminded me of, obviously not aliens, but what they look like in PSI 5.
Yeah, same. I think it's borrowed that engine a bit, I think.
Yeah, it's Mimi Doggett, isn't it? So she's got that sort of very nice sort of character style that she's just manages to do, and does it very well. And she, hardball, all those kind of things she's done. Yeah, so it's an enjoyable take on, on card games, really. So it's pretty decent. It's got great use. I thought really good use of visuals, even a bit slightly stereotypical characters. They're amusing though. The game itself plays a decent game of cards. I was playing this for a while and actually enjoying myself because it just felt like I like poker. It don't bother me. I like blackjack. It's okay. Blackjack's a bit luck based, but poker's a bit better. And the versions of poker that are there, they're all present and correct that I could make out. So yeah, it all seemed good and worked. And the presentation throughout is top notch. It's nice and simple. Little sayings the players make, they're amusing. The only thing I did think I wasn't sure that it's another multi-load. It's a little egregious. It seems to be going back and forth. So it's a bit of weight. I know there's a fast loader on it, which is good. But even so, I'm not quite sure it needed quite so much loading. I don't know. Maybe there's loads and loads of poker algorithms running in the background.
The American disc-based game that's come across the
They just don't care, do they? It's just like, no, this section will load separately. They don't try and optimize to fit in 64K. They just make it on disc.
Absolutely.
So it's odd that you can play against... I find it weird that you can play against Gorbachev, Reagan and Thatcher, if I'm perfectly honest. That's like a weird choice.
Strange.
It's like, just have more different weird characters, around the world or whatever, I don't know. But hey, it's the 80s, so I get it. It still suffers a little bit from what we've said about these kind of games. They're a little bit pointless, though, which with all virtual gambling games. I know points go up, points go down and stuff like that, but it's, I don't know, when you're trying to sort of simulate a real world game of actually making money, I don't know, it always is a bit weird. But this is a better version of all that. It's amusing to watch, and as you've rightly said, especially the massive arms of the dealers, which made me laugh loads whenever they came sort of singing out. Instead of just thinking of RoboCop and Ronnie Cox at the end, things like that. But yeah, it's all right. This I'm not quite sure it was worth 87%. I think that was a touch generous, if I'm honest, especially for a tenner. I don't know. 70s would have been where I'd have put it, but that's just me, I think. What about anything else? Do you think? Would you have given it 87%?
I think it's a bit high, actually.
I do as well.
I wouldn't have given it that high. I'd have put it more in the sort of 60s somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I think that's me, same as me. There we go, that's Card Sharks. It's decent enough, it's all right, but it depends whether you like computer poker, I guess. Nothing better to do, whatever. Anyway, there you go. Let's move along. I'm sure the next one's Ace. Because it's a budget title. This is Rockford. This caught me completely by surprise. I'd never heard of this. I didn't even know this existed.
No, I've not heard of this one.
Never heard it. Budget Boulder Dash. Okay. And I don't understand it. It's for some reason I cannot fathom. This release has left me feeling unclean and bewildered. So according to the back of the box, this is the only true arcade version of the classic game Boulder Dash. So as much as I could make out, this is a conversion of an Amiga-powered arcade game that is based on the classic C64 game Boulder Dash. And it also says that this is the ultimate gameware challenge. Yeah. And also, it says at the bottom that there was an extra free game that came with it called Back to Reality, which was a quest across 2 universes to save the Earth from becoming a black hole. I have no idea what's going on with this. I just don't understand what this is, where it came from, or why anybody felt this was a good idea. Because they've made Boulder Dash worse in every single way possible that you could possibly make Boulder Dash worse. So the producer of this was Icon Design, and the music is by Jason Seabrook. And, it's a really shit Boulder Dash thing. It starts badly with a really plain title screen that has a raster glitch on it. Like, why has it got a raster glitch above the text? What's going on here?
Not good.
I'm not sure why. It's just text on a black and a horrible scrolling one of the things at the bottom. It's just awful. But it shouldn't have a raster glitch. No, this doesn't bode well. Pressing fire starts the game. Your eyes are immediately assaulted by a horrible, garish level of Boulder Dash. It all seems there, but the walls are parrots, the gems are smiley faces, and the bolts and dirt are a horrible colour selection. You're also now one of 5 characters that you play in this game. You're no longer a termite. No, now you play as a cowboy, a spaceman, a doctor, a chef, and a hunter. I think you're a hunter in the opening levels, and I don't understand why these other characters are there. How often do doctors and chefs go digging through dirt to find objects? What makes no logical sense?
No.
very little sense. The idea of a termite digging through dirt to find diamonds, it had a certain sense to it. Termites dig through dirt and you're looking for precious gems and whatever, and the fireflies and everything. It kind of worked. This is none. And it's only one of the elements that is worse here. The animated smiley faces are ugly. The creatures lack the easy to read elements of the fireflies and the butterflies of the original. So it's really hard to make anything out because it's all the same colour. It's just this horrible orangey yellow nightmare. The constant music is annoying and the sound effects are not as good either. There's not one element of this that's comparable to the original, the sequel, the third one set in space. And let's not forget, we haven't even mentioned the construction kit, which allowed you to make your own standalone levels. So I don't understand the point of this in any way. I don't know what happened, why someone made this for the Amiga, ported it to an arcade, or powered an Amiga I buy that. What is this? I don't understand. And then thought, we'll just release it back onto the C64 at a budget price. No, don't do that. I'm not bothering describing the gameplay because it is Boulder Dash, okay? So you run through dirt, you collect enough of something to open the exit and try not to get crushed by things. That's still there, but it's wrong. It feels wrong. It's wrong how you push stuff. It doesn't feel right. The physics aren't as good. It's all wrong. I'm sure the original must be out on budget by now. I mean, it came out, 1984? Boulder Dash? It's old, isn't it? It's old, 1984, 85.
It's well old, yeah. It's one of the old ones, isn't it?
So it's clearly out on budget by this point. But, if you want unlimited Boulder Dash, get the construction kit. Don't know why anyone thought this was a good idea. I've said that already, but it still holds true. Utter crap and a stain on the name of Boulder Dash, which this is clearly playing on. Because you're not Rockford anymore. They've even called it Rockford, but you're a chef or a cowboy. No, Rockford's a termite. He
is, which makes sense in the game when you're doing that.
Yeah, it's in the pages of Zapped. This got 31%. I don't know how it got that high. Maybe because it's vaguely Boulder Dash, but I was affronted by this. I was like, what the hell was this? The first time I tried it, I must have flicked it onto another level or something because it was some horrible nightmare where you had water coming out and flames and you had to sort of line them up or something. Some of the later levels, it got really weird, but they moved at like about, once every 2 seconds in like this really unpleasant manner. It was all crap. This was garbage. I hated it. What about you?
Same. Confusing mess, isn't it, this? Does anyone even know why it was even made? Really?
No, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find anything on it.
It's a Boulder Dash game that feels like a bad parody of the actual Boulder Dash game, which, by the way, is A, better than this in all of its variants, B, works better and scrolls better, and C, has better graphics generally.
Yeah.
So the notion of Boulder Dash is a very simple thing. And this is apparently some kind of conversion of an arcade, apparently. Did you say, or something?
Yeah.
There's an arcade behind it or something?
Powered by the Amiga.
I mean, did no one stop to ask what on earth the purpose of this was at any point?
Nope.
And somebody go, wait a minute, why are we doing this again? Oh, God, yeah, why are we doing it? It should have stopped at that point, but it didn't, did it?
No, it didn't.
£3. I mean, if you've probably got the original by now, or you've possibly got the construction kit, both of which render this budget pretender pointless anyway. Utterly stupid. A demake is not a good thing.
No.
And this is a bad demake. So no matter what the price, no. £3 is too much for this demake. Get lost. You bastardized the name of Boulder Dash, and I don't take kindly to that.
No, neither do I. It's one of the C64 classics, and
yes, it is.
Shat upon it.
You've done a great big massive shit on it. Don't like that.
I'm guessing we didn't like this then. No, we did not. Let's move on quickly. Let's dig our way out of that turd and move on to our last couple of games. Graham, ATF. Tell us about ATF.
Oh, this was a bit of an odd, quirky thing, wasn't it? The Advanced Tactical Fighter, the ATF. You basically are in the control of a Lockheed YF-22A Advanced Tactical Fighter, otherwise known as the F-22 Raptor to you and me.
Ooh.
So in this game, there's some kind of war. There's a war between, baddies and goodies. Who cares? It's just there's battle going on, and your mission in this is to fly various sorties on a quest to blow up enemy bases, essentially. So it's a bit of an odd thing, this, because it's I think what it wants to be is a third-person sort of action flying shooting game. And it kind of is. But they've tried to sort of hoy in elements of simulation in it. And because it's got those things in it a little bit, it sort of misses the mark a little. There's some really clever technical stuff in this, but it does miss the mark. So you actually work your way through. So the idea is you've got to fly your stealth bomber, for want of a better description, your F-22, take it out to various different targets. Each level, for want of a better description of what it is, consists of enemy bases, and those enemy bases are strewn across a generated map, which you are presented with when you first start the game. So when you start the game, you're presented with the map and where the bases are. And you've obviously, the idea is you've got to fly to them and shoot them and take them down, take the bases out. And obviously things along the way that will come at you, shoot them as well. So attack the installations of the enemy, try and avoid the comms bases, but, blow everything up, find things and blow them up on the map. And so that's kind of how you do it. That's kind of it. You've got different weapons at your disposal, which is, there's 3 types of weapon, I think. There's Maverick missiles, there's air-to-ground missiles, air-to-air missiles, and machine guns. And when you first get past the opening sort of section, click on it, first off, you get your map view, and then you'll get your kind of view of the war. They call it the war report, which gives you an idea of the status of things, which makes me laugh actually, because it's like the color key, allied, green, enemy, red, and then it's just these sort of bar chart of. And it's just pointless. It's a pointless thing. As you go through the game, you get that back, and obviously the status of things changes, but it all starts 50-50. So they've got 50 tanks, you've got 50 tanks. They've got 50 radars, you've got 50 radars, and it's like that. Mm-hmm. All right, you get that. So you see the status report. You then have the ordnance. So at this point, you go to a third screen where you then have to load up with your cannon magazine, so your weaponry, your missiles, and your different kind of missiles and fuel. You've actually got a free weight to start off with. So as you add more fuel and missiles and weaponry and so on, so your weight increases, which means you're going to use more fuel as you fly. So you've got to think about the balance of that, because you do have to fly around in this game quite a lot. So you've got to think a little bit about tactics you're going to use and everything else. Fair enough. So once you've loaded your plane with what you think is the sufficient ammo, you'll be presented with the start screen. Now, this is a bit weird, I found. This is clearly a game that's been brought out on other platforms, and I think the Spectrum version, I don't know if that's probably the same thing, but colorless version. But here you get this medium res sort of screen. So if you go from sort of left to right, the main game window is kind of you've got the classic green for ground. You've got an aeroplane sprite, but you have this kind of sort of weird, it's kind of a grid view of the ground, but it's sort of, I'm trying to explain what it looks like, but aside from the sort of tower blocky graphics and other graphics in the game when you're flying, because this game you actually fly quite close to the ground. It's not like you take off into the middle of the air in the sky and you're flying around. You actually fly quite low to the ground. And the ground sort of zooms towards you in this kind of grid type view. It's quite clever how it does it. And the bumps and the valleys and the sort of the hills and the valleys of the ground are presented to you by the grid changing the height. So I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but think of a grid that you're looking at in a kind of 3D perspective from the back of the airplane as it flies towards you. And if the ground is flat, then it's a complete grid. It's a complete flat grid. But if you get hills and bumps, then you obviously get peaks in some of the points and some of the vertices of the map. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. And so you fly your sprite around this map at a rate of knots, actually. It does feel like you're going pretty damn fast as you're flying around. And you've got a heads-up display in there, which gives you your thrust and your speed. It gives you, the altitude that you're flying at and all that kind of stuff. And obviously your direction. And you've also, on the right-hand side, got your score and your map, which on the map, you get these little black dots, and that's can just generally fly towards the dots and shoot anything that comes in your way, or run into it, which is something I'll come into in a moment. You've obviously got a finite amount of weapons and a finite amount of fuel. So, and you will get radar lock on you, and so you can fire different weapons to sort of, I think what they call it, is it chaff? But you can launch kind of a chaff to sort of, and you can also jam incoming missiles if you get surface-to-air missiles. You've got about 3 or 4 seconds to press the J key. This is actually controlled mostly by joystick, but there are a couple of keyboard commands. So you'll press Q to up your thrust, A to down thrust. You can obviously control the flight with the joystick. And then you've got a few other things, launch missile is aim. So you've got a few sort of standard sort of key commands in here as well, which is where the sort of simulation part comes in.
Pressing T to just auto fly across.
It follows the ground, doesn't it? It follows the terrain. So that is quite nice. The way the game plays in terms of the sort of shooty part, it's fine. It actually feels quite like a sort of decent shooter, albeit that you never really get that high into the air, which for an airplane seems weird compared to Geebee Rally, where this feels more. It's like a really weird thing to say, but it feels like this is almost like this would have maybe worked better if this had been a car just racing along the ground in that kind of way. And I don't know, it's really weird. But anyway, so they've gone for a kind of I guess you'd call it I won't say shooter, but an action simulation. I don't know. Zapped came up with a word for it in the review. I forget what they called it now. But they basically said in their review that it doesn't quite contain enough of the crossover parts to really make it worthwhile. There's a couple of things in it. So you'd be flying around this shooting at things. So it becomes kind of a shoot 'em up, 3D shoot 'em up, using that kind of vertices-based scrolling towards you, so where the landscape comes. And that does kind of work, albeit that the delineation between sand and grass is just a line. So everything's carved out into very finite lines in this. And so when you get to the seat, it's like blue line comes to green line, comes to yellow line. But all right, that's a limitation, but it still maintains the speed. Problem I had really is that obviously you can crash in this if you hit the ground, but there's no reason why you would want to do that. It's actually, you just have to aim your airplane at the ground. But I found that the enemies are quite easy to shoot at. They're a bit dumb. And also you can just fly into them, which was weird.
Yeah.
So you can accidentally clip them. And in most of these games, you're going to go tumbling to the ground in a plume of smoke. In this, no, you've got a fairly robust airplane that could just smash its way through anything in the sky, which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a strange thing to put in a game like this. So obviously you've got to fly the missions, and if you crash the crash, or you get you run out of fuel, you get shot down, or you get blown up too many times, when you're going to crash, and that's the end of you, and you're going to get a mission over. You'll get your total score, and then you'll get a rundown of how much of the defense and how many weapons you had left, and you get some stats and everything else, and how many planes you had. Then you get your kind of war report, which made me laugh loads. Did you play it when you got the war report, the gains and losses?
No, I didn't get actually that far.
Oh, it made me laugh loads. I got my performance was never good in this. Which is odd, because I thought I'd done really well. At one point, I was blowing up their bases. I was launching missiles. I was flying through the air. I was doing really good. Parts of this are a bit weird. Like when you first start the game, you used to start on a grid. There's no runway. You're just on a grid.
You're on a grid, yeah.
And it's like, I think it could have just done with a little bit more thought about that bit. And I think, why not just start them in the air? Why this takeoff and landing malarkey? We've said it many times anyway. So there's parts of this I quite liked. I liked some of the simplicity of the approach. So I think it's, you choose your weapons in your game, go. No, there's no denying that's what it is. And when you're flying it, it had a nice sense of almost Sky Fox type flying, in the sense that you're flying your thing around. It's quite fast. These things zooming towards you, and you're just shooting at them, and more often than not, you'll shoot them out of the sky quite quickly. The dogfights in it aren't really dogfights, because you don't get more than about 70 feet from the ground. So it's not like you can fly up into the air and zoom around and get behind them. They're just kind of doggedly, annoyingly get in the way, and you just have to sort of get thrust out the way to the right, slow down, turn around, and then thrust back to where you were until you're facing them.
So that's like dance. It's a weird dance. Thrust down, turn around,
to the
thrust
left.
back.
Thrust to the right. What does it all add up to? Well, I thought the graphics in this, the graphic technique is clever. I quite like that idea of having that kind of grid and that kind of almost not vector, because it's not vectors, but that it plays out well to make the ground, to give you an idea of where you are on the ground. It works a lot better than not giving you any idea, Geebee Air Rally. So you get an idea of where you are in the game.
Yeah.
And you do get to the places where you need to be quite quickly, perhaps too quickly. I don't know how fast these airplanes can go, but I turboed across the island in about 2 minutes. So, but at the same time, that keeps the action good. But when it gets to the action, it drops its simulation to be more like an arcade, like Afterburner type arcade. And so because it goes like Afterburner, it changes the way you're playing it. So you think, okay, well, I'm playing an Afterburner set game, so I'm just shooting everything, ramming the airplanes out the sky and everything else. And all of a sudden it's dead. And it's like, these are the parameters of our game in the simulation. It's like, well, I wasn't playing a simulation. I thought I was just playing an arcade. So it doesn't quite know where its heart is. But graphically, this was coded by somebody called Neil Coxhead. I'm sorry, but I can't help but chuckle at the name. Sorry, Neil. I can't help it.
Child.
No, I can't help it. Neil Coxhead. Especially the conversation we've had earlier. And graphics were by Anthony West. It was by an outfit called, produced by Digital Integration for all formats. And I quite liked what it had to offer. I just think it got confused about what it wanted to be, and it kind of tried to lean too much into the arcade style without just making it that. If they'd have just made it that without all of the complicated keys and other commands, I mean, there's not loads of them, but just make it more about that, and I think it would have worked a bit better. It got 60% in Zapped, and I can sort of see why, because it's just not quite enough of. It's a bit too easy and a bit too daft in its logic to be really serious. And if you could just take off a bit higher, it doesn't have to be loads higher, but it would have made it feel a bit more like you were actually flying an airplane as opposed to skimming the ground in a giant, aero frisbee. But I had fun with it while I played it. I've never heard of it. I mean, I'd never heard of this game before in my life. But I gave it a shot, and I thought, you know what? If you're going to do one, do it like this. It was similar to another game we played but it was like it might have been the Afterburner, actually. Well, I think it might have been. I don't know if we've had Afterburner yet, though.
No, we haven't. Are you thinking of Skyrunner?
Yeah, it reminded me of Skyrunner. And there was another one where you skimmed across the ground as well. Was that Skyrunner? Maybe it reminded me of those.
Was that Stealth?
Stealth, that's it. And they weren't terrible in the way that they played, but we said the same thing. This the mileage is limited on this. No matter how many enemy types you put in, how many bases you've got to get to, it just all feels a little bit. And I'm convinced that you will never have enough fuel to finish these missions. I think that's a secret thing. Because I ran out of fuel halfway around. I'm thinking, hang on a minute.
Can you not land and refuel? I'd never do. I don't know if you could.
Maybe I never did, but that's probably the way to do it, is actually to do that. Maybe I didn't bother.
That's the way we do it in the real world. It's like, my car, I can't move my car anymore. Have you refueled it? Oh,
that's a really good example, though. That's a really good example of the kind of confused logic in this game. In an arcade game like in an Afterburner, you wouldn't do that. You just go blasting stuff and it's for blasting. Yeah. But all of a sudden, I've got to land the airplane and refuel. I'm like, hang on a minute.
So it's a bit like Ace, where Ace had that refueling and stuff. So
and they could have added that, but you need to be in the air for that. It's dangerous to refuel an airplane 3 feet from the ground. I mean, that's dangerous.
That's true. That is true.
But so, what about you? What did you think of it all?
Well, this reminded me. Do you remember? Is it Zapped, Virus on the Amiga? That kind of 3D
remember
one
that.
where you had that sort of the landscape sort of scrolled and it was all black, but they had like a square of landscape that was made up of grids and went up and down, and you were that craft that aimed down and shot stuff.
Oh God, I can't remember that.
If while I'm saying this, have a look for a screenshot of Zarch or Virus on the Amiga. You'll know the one I mean. And it just reminded me a little bit of that because it's got an interesting display and some very good technical aspects. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know I'm looking at it now. Yeah, I know which one you mean now.
Yeah,
it's similar. It's got that kind of
low
camera angle.
Flying.
It's higher up.
Yes, you can go higher up. Yeah, but it's got that low level landscape that sort of undulates and moves.
Yes,
I mean this is a C64 version, but this kind of reminded me a little bit of that. So it's got some good technical aspects to this, but it's let down by the strange way it displays the world. It never felt like you were turning.
No,
which is the main thing I had.
2 feet off the ground.
Well, it's not just 2 feet off the ground, it's that the grid always goes straight. So you don't ever feel like you're actually turning. It feels like you're kind of just skidding around somewhere. It just feels odd. The sense of 3D is good, though, and I like the sort of tracking along and the fact that, that kind of stuff, and it's fast, and that's some nice bits. It did remind me of that of Skyrunner as well. But you're right. It's a weird combo, and I've name checked it as well. There didn't seem to be enough depth to this to justify all the sort of the simulatory elements to it. There just wasn't enough of the other bit. It either was, like you said, it's in some middle ground of neither one nor the other. I think with this, if there'd have been better going out for an all-out arcade style, and I've written Afterburner Blaster, because I think the visual, the game engine is good, and when stuff's coming at you, there's you could have done waves.
It's fast. It's nice. It's not junky, really. It's nice.
Yeah, if you full screened this a bit, or even just tried to get it, you could have done a decent sort of Afterburnery type blaster here, rather than what we have here, and just gone full on arcade shooting sort of. I mean, it's space area type thing. Anything. That engine could have done this quite well, I think, because there's some nice sprite scaling going on. So yeah, it's a good technical foundation to this, but it just feels wrong somehow. It just didn't feel right, and I didn't like the fact that the world didn't turn, just the map did, or you sort of turned on the map. It looked weird, and like you said, everything's based on a grid. So I was suddenly over the sea. Like, okay, it's not a terrible game, this, but I think it's somewhat misguided when it comes down to it. There's a good technical base here that could have been made into a much more fun experience if they'd nailed either doubled down on one thing. And I think those arcadey aspects of the direction they should have gone here.
I agree.
But that's just me probably just wanting another arcade game and not a bloody other technical simulation. Because C64 doesn't do technical simulations very well. This could have been a good arcadey 3D blaster, but it's weirdly somewhere in the middle. Anyway.
Not to be.
No, not to be. There we go. That's ATF. We've got one more coming up. So let's move along and let's cover that. This is another arcade conversion. This is Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder. I forgot to put. I actually ported this. No, I didn't. I've got it here. The latest in a long line of arcade ports is here in the form of the oddly designed and looking Rolling Thunder from Namco. The C64 port was done by Tiertex. Never heard of them, but they will go on to do the conversion of Street Fighter, which I'd remember being not particularly good.
Oh.
This was published by US Gold. According to the back of the C64 release, Rolling Thunder introduces intrigue and heroism in an intense action game. A secret society is plotting to conquer the world. The Rolling Thunder undercover police organization is assigned to expose this conspiracy. Top agent, codename Albatross, is sent to the enemy headquarters to complete the mission and free the allies held hostage. So in the arcade, this ran on the Namco System 86 hardware because it was released in 1986. I couldn't find who actually designed it. I think it's just in-house Namco. There's no one sort of scientist that I could see. In the main story in the arcade, and partly in this as well, you are tasked with saving Leela from the evil organization Geldra, which is run by the elusive Mabu, who has designs on taking over the world. It's a plot. It's a plot. There you go. Let's leave it there. So this is a left to right platform shooter where you make your way through 2 acts of 5 levels in order to get to Mabu, take him out, and rescue Layla. You play as Albatross. You can walk and jump and fire your gun, essentially. You can also leap to the platforms above by holding fire and pressing up. And whilst on those, pressing up and fire again makes you jump back down to the lower level. You don't know how long I was pressing down and fire because that seemed like the logical one. I was just ducking and shooting.
Too much logic.
Yeah. Why would I push up again? Just didn't make any sense. Once I figured it out, I was like, okay, got to press up and jump again. So that's this. The levels themselves are usually made of the 2 levels. So they've got the 2 height levels. Although some of these will see you going higher than that as you navigate your way over crates and boxes before making your way back down again. So if there's anything above you can always jump on it. Just hold up and fire. Just tap up and fire. There are also numerous doors in each level. And it's from these that your hooded enemies appear. So these are hooded enemies. So this game is kind of weird in the way it sort of starts and the way it looks. I always thought the arcade game had a really unique visual style. There's nothing else I thought that really looked like this or felt like this. It's kind of really colourful, but you're being sort of attacked by what look like members of the Ku Klux Klan, just in multicoloured get-ups. So they've got these big pointy hoods. They've all got these weird outfits on, and it's very strange. And they on the title screen, Geldra would walk, or Mabu, would walk on, and they would all like, Heil Hitler him. It's all very strange. Now, to this game's credit, for the title screen of this, it does replicate where we've seen before with loads of arcade conversions that don't really have a lot to that title screen. This has that as its title screen. So it has Mabu stood there, and the three sort of hooded guys are there, and they all sort of salute him. And it keeps doing that on a loop, but it's the title screen from the arcade, so fair play. They've actually fitted a lot in this, and they've kept that sort of arcade feel. Because I remember what we saw with the Ikari Warriors a few weeks back, where it had the sort of plane landing and stuff like that. So yes, so you can jump around, you play the levels, and these hooded enemies, these ones you see on the front screen, they're the ones that will be your enemies for most of the game, really. These enemies come in 3 colours. There are the ones in purple. They take 1 hit to kill from your gun. There are yellow ones. They take 2 hits, and white ones, which take 3. If you hit them, the yellow ones, they bounce back, and then you have to shoot them again. The white ones will bounce back twice, and you got to shoot them 3 times. There's a later level, which is a lava level. Don't ask. I don't know why there's a lava level in this. But then in that level, there are strange floating fire sprites to contend with as well. But I think that's pretty much the only derivative sort of different enemy. For the most part, it's the 3 coloured enemies will be what you're facing. These enemies, they can come on from either side of the screen, and they can also walk out of the doors that I mentioned. They can shoot their guns at you as well. They get in your face, and they also, some of them throw bombs from the upper level to the lower level as well. Any contact with their bullets, their fists, or the explosions will take 1 of your 5 lives away, and should you lose them all, it is game over. The whole point of this is to make it through all 10 levels with your 5 lives, and kill Mabu at the very end, and so that's what you got to do. Some of the doors in the level, they also have a gun symbol next to them. And if you push up in front of them, you'll saunter in quite casually. I like the saunter animation. This is like, I'm just wandering in to get some bullets, and you get some more bullets. So that's quite nice. Because if you don't, then because you've only got finite amount of bullets at your disposal. If you manage to make it to the end of a level, you'll be congratulated. You'll get a point bonus for how much time you've got left before you move on to the next level. Complete the first 5, and it's weird. You then have to repeat them all. It's just odd. There are only actual 5 individual levels in this. You just have to go through them twice. It's only at the end of the 10th level that you get to Mabu, and then that's when you can kill him. So in that respect, this is very similar to the arcade game. All the levels are present, and the arcade game has 10 levels as well. You run through them both twice. The different levels are there. The fire sprites are there. The warehouse, it's all here. So in that respect, it's pretty good. The levels are similarly designed. The ability to get better bullets for your machine gun is there too. So you got these machine gun bullets, although there's no graphic change to see you shooting it rather than your pistol, which is a bit disappointing. And you fight, like in the arcade, you get your machine gun out, and when you run out of bullets, you go back to your pistol. You don't, it's still firing from your pistol. The visual layout of this, the action in the game takes place on just over the half of the top of the screen, and it does feel a bit squashed. The rest of the screen is the UI at the bottom, and that shows a massive logo. We've got another big logo on screen here, while on the right, quite basically, you've got your score, your number of bullets, the number of MG bullets, which is the machine gun bullets, the time left to complete the level, and the number of lives you've got left. The graphics at the top, they're kind of what you'd call Kung Fu Master blocky, I think. They're in that similar sort of vein because they're big. The thing with the arcade game is this is it's a tall game. All the sprites are dead tall. Everything's lanky and tall and thin. Now, that's not something the C64 does very well. So what we have here is, I think, I'm not sure if they're expanded sprites, but they're chunky, but they're big, and but to their credit, they're okay animated, and they do reminiscently look like the arcade. So this does look like a C64 version of Rolling Thunder. So that's not too bad. So yeah, it's all right. The scrolling is smooth, I found. There's no glitches or bugs that I found. Everything worked. The animation is reminiscent of the arcade game, and the enemies do look kind of similar, as I said. As a fully featured version of Rolling Thunder that I could think, and I quite a lot of Rolling Thunder, this is not too bad, but it's not without its issues. And the first one is the speed at which it runs at. It's a lot slower than the arcade. It's not the slowest of the 8-bit versions. I watched a video of the Amstrad version, and that's even slower than this. I didn't bother with the Spectrum version, but yeah, I think this is probably maybe the fastest lot. I don't know. And the low monotonous tune will have your eyes closing and your mouth yawning in no time. For some strange reason, the speed of this and that tune, it feels quite somnambulistic. It just makes you want to go to sleep. It's like playing underwater or in a dream. It's really weird. It's like playing this. It's like, it's like, okay, this is nice. Just relaxing. It's like drifting off. Oh, that was dead. It's odd. It's really strange, but it's not unplayable. What is more tricky, though, is what they've done with the enemies, who will appear and shoot at you almost immediately. So they'll come outdoors and shoot, and the bullets and the reaction, because it's slow, you don't always have it's kind of almost a similar problem we had. It's not as bad, but that Time Fighter, what we had last week, where that you can be shooting and the animation switch to go to duck is not fast enough. Doesn't react quick enough, so you'll get hit more than you think you should do, and one hit kills you, so you'll lose lives quickly. So they'll shoot you really quickly, and they don't act that way in the arcade game. So in the arcade game, they'll be a lot more forgiving. They don't quite start shooting at you until quite far on into the first level in the arcade game, and when they do shoot, they've got quite a wind up in their sort of animation, so you can see it. Here, it's just they walk out and that bang, and they're instantly shooting. It's kind of what we saw in those, I think in that really early Mission Elevator, similar sort of thing where enemies would just come outdoors and shoot. So it shares a lot of sort of commonality to that game. So yeah, the snappiness of the arcade game has been all but lost here, which is a bit of a downer. Couple that with the fact that the strongest enemies appear from the get-go. I often had 3 guys in the white uniform appear immediately upon starting. That shouldn't happen. I know the arcade game quite well. You get the easy coloured guys, first of all, the purple guys, to shoot once. You don't start off with the hardest guys just appearing immediately, jumping at you, trying to kill you, and you've got to waste loads of bullets trying to take them out. That don't do it. So it shows that I think the random generator of enemies in this has not been tuned correctly. And as noted, they'll instantly fire upon you, meaning that you spend probably more time in this crouched down waiting to take people out, because they never crouch and fire, so you can just crouch under the bullets. It's just getting to that crouch state. So you spend a lot of time crouching, flicking back and forth, trying to shoot people than you do moving around, more than you do in the arcade game. So that's a bit of an issue. So those are my main issues. It's the speed, and the enemy sort of tuning, I think, is a bit off. However, if you get into the mood of this and alter your play accordingly, because I went into this playing as I would the arcade game, and I was dead in seconds due to the slower nature of this, you'd have to sort of dial back your speed and play it as it wants you to play it. There is a bit of enjoyment to be had. The shame here is that it's lost all that crazy over-the-top in-your-face colourful weirdness of the arcade game. And it's a shame, really, as this felt like one of the stranger titles out there, and it does feel like a dull... The graphics are not bright. They could have been a bit bright and a bit more in-your-face, but they're not. It feels like a dull, dreamlike version of that arcade game. It's not terrible, but it's lost a bit of its oomph and that funniness, that weirdness and that kookiness that the arcade game always had, that always used to draw me to it in the arcade. And I would have liked the music it just needs to be sped up, and I think you'd have had a much more enjoyable game here. But it's not terrible. It's certainly better than GunSmoke, the other arcade game you saw in this. And as arcade ports go, I think probably maybe one of the better ones. It's above middle tier, I'd say. So I quite enjoyed this. I didn't mind it. Once I got into it, I thought it was okay. It got 76%. Maybe a little high, especially at tenner, but not too much. I want to be too egregious to that. What about you?
I've got to be honest, really. I never really liked Rolling Thunder in the arcade that much.
That's fair enough.
It never really appealed to me. It's quirky. I do get that, and it just never really grabbed my attention. I played it a few times when I've been at the arcade club, and I've always kind of wanted to like it more than I do. I get that it is odd.
It's really weird.
It is weird. I mean, it is dead tall.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of thin and lanky in it, like you say. And you are, fighting the rainbow version of the KKK of a sort. And, that, there's weirdness to it. And it's kind of a throwback to kind of a couple of things, actually, which I'll come to in it in terms of where it might have got some of that inspiration from a bit. But so the C64 version, it's for me, it was underwhelming, but that's partly the arcade and partly because this is just the arcade in kind of blockier trousers. But it is all of the arcade in blocky trousers.
In a single load.
Which isn't so bad.
Yeah.
I couldn't escape the notion that there isn't much to it, but there isn't much to it. It's an odd arcade, and the conversion that's come out of it is a blocky odd arcade conversion. It's a bit weird. Mm-hmm. Where you jump around things is similar to the arcade, but not quite as obviously well as animated and well realised, but it's still in there. Jumping up and down is quite weird, and a weird way of... it's the weird dynamic. It's the way you used to be able to... In the arcade, it sort of hops over the metal railings, doesn't it, and stuff like that. And it's really strange. So it just feels a bit... Because of the speed of the C64 version, it makes a game that is not lackluster and rote, lackluster and rote.
Yeah.
Because it feels slower than it should be. I mean, the arcade is quite fast in the way it plays. And because of that, you're shooting, ducking and running and jumping up and down and all those things. But it is a really odd thing, isn't it? It gave me I don't know if you remember the TV show Get Smart.
Well, this is set in 1960. So the actual game is set in that 1960s. Yeah, Get Smart, Our Man Flynn.
Yeah, because the music's very much like Get Smart and Our Man Flynn. It's that kind of vibe. And I suppose it's kind of got the Batman, that kind of colour scheme. Not Batman colour scheme, but you know what I mean? That kind of colour. Sort of really vibrant colours. And that's quite good. The C64 sort of carries that off a bit, because the C64 can be vibrant when it chooses to be. And I thought that some of the animations were all right, actually, for what they were. There's the husk of the game in here in the 64 version, as it were, and it's not terrible. I just didn't really get on with the original that much. So for me, it was a bit ploddy. But the main killer for it, when I went to look at the arcade as well to see exactly how close it was the speed, because the speed is critical to this game, it seemed. I mean, I remember playing it thinking, actually, that's the one thing, that's what I remembered about it, was that when you're walking along shooting, there's a good sense of pace to this. Whereas here, it's just kind of dragging its feet in and everything's a bit boring and a bit slow. And can you imagine if you're watching a James Bond movie and they all talked a bit like that? And, are you okay, James? Yeah, I'm fine. It's been a real rough day today, though.
You sound like you're doing Thomas the Tank Engine.
All right, Thomas.
It could be Rolling Thunder. It could be the name of the new engine that's turned up. Who's this that's turned up?
Who's this? The Fat Controller said to James Bond. No one you need to worry about, said James as he brutally hit him with a stick. Thomas exclaimed, oof. No, what am I doing? So it's
Percy
ploddy.
Closed his eyes and winced.
It's just not very interesting at this speed. If it had been a bit faster, it might have got away with it, but it doesn't quite. And because it's an average odd game, it comes out as a slow average odd game, which is just not the right side of the gameplay curve I want to be on. So it got 76%, didn't it, in Zapped? Which is, I suppose, that's actually a little bit generous maybe for a full price game, but it is the arcade. I mean, you can't get away from that. When everything's in there. They haven't skipped 3 of the levels because for inconvenience sake. It's all there. Yeah. It's just what is weird is weird.
Some of the things that they have excised and they have cut out in the arcade game. When you get to the end of the level, the big blue screen, you get like a cutscene to the big blue screen when they're in their control room. And in the arcade game, as you progress, Layla, there's images of her being tortured in more egregious ways. Like, she's quite weird. Like, there's one she's sort of strung, because at the end of the arcade game, she's like almost sort of crucified up on the wall, which is kind of a bit strange. And as you get through the levels, there's like one, she's been electrocuted, she looks in pain, she's close with her face, going, and stuff like that. But they're quite, well-drawn visual graphics and close-ups. So that's been cut out, probably due to memory thing, but kind of looking back at now, it's like actually works a bit better because it has. But yeah, so that was kind of a bit weird when I actually looked through the arcade game. And I went back and played it on MAME, so I had a crack on MAME, just to remind myself of the speed of it and everything, and it is. And what I did was I stuck the emulator on to 60 hertz just to see if sticking up to 60 hertz. It did feel better to play, but the problem was it just exacerbated that fact of the fact that as soon as enemies appeared, they were shooting at you and you didn't have time to react. So there's it's almost there. If they sped up and toned the enemies down a bit and the shooting, you'd have they'd have a solid Rolling Thunder conversion here.
Like I said, the husk is there.
Yeah.
But just not enough. It's just not enough. So It's a shame, really. I think it might have benefited from just having a bit of a think about how they were going to present that in what way, but I think they just did what they did.
Yeah, some of the backgrounds are quite nice. I mean,
It looks kind of like the arcade. I say it's just in blocky trousers.
Yeah, blocky.
And they do weird things in the arcade, don't they? Some of the guys just stood around on crates.
Yeah.
Just stood around.
Really
weird.
They do that in the C64 version. Sometimes they'll just be stood there looking back and forth, and it's there, but it's just it's leaded.
It's one of the better looking. It's one of the better playing complete versions, isn't it? But there's obviously it came out on so many different formats over the years, hasn't it? It's quite quite incredible.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, and like I said, it's okay. It's an okay version. It was better than, because I was expecting this to be a dog egg. I really was thinking it was going to be awful. But at first I was like, oh god, this is so. But like I said, tune thinking. I got to, I think, midway through level 4. I think. So I didn't get too bad on a few goes once I got the hang of it. It is actually quite easy once you actually ease yourself into how it plays and know that you just got to crouch all the time. The tricky bits are when you have to clamber over any barrels or anything or crate, and then you kind of at the mercy of a couple of things. But yeah, it was okay. It was fine. Like I said, blocky 64 trousers. It's more like rolling grumble.
Yeah, I was just looking at the sprite from the arcade, and he's got quite stylish flares on and sort of heeled boots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's well cool. Yeah, not the C64 one though.
Not as such. Although looking at it, they could have probably got away with drawing that on the C64 a little. It's not out of the realms of possibility. It's still only about 6 or 8 colour sprite.
Yeah,
but you can only have 4 colours on the C64 easily. So.
Yeah, I just wish that they used a bit more of the screen actually, just to make it a bit bigger.
Yeah, well, that's the bit of the cop out, isn't it, to do that? But
but there you go.
That graphic I've nicked and put it on the show notes. So I think that's the NES version. I don't know if it's the arcade one, but anyway, that's what it is. Mr. Albatross to you and me. Mr.
Albatross, yeah, there we go. Rolling Thunder, and that's it. That's it for this week. We've looked at 8 games. What are 8 games they were? We looked at Samurai Warrior, the Battles of Usagi Yojimbo, which I was obviously way more into, but that's fair enough. It's not always the same. GunSmoke, which we rightly, whatever. UCM, what was it with these commando craps? Geebee Air Rally, which was a stupidly simple, weird flight racer. Carchax, which was okay. Rockford, which was an affront. ATF, which was misguided. And finally Rolling Thunder, which was... blocky 64 flares and slow.
Blares.
He's got his blares on. Farrah Blares.
He has got Farrahs on, hasn't he, that guy?
Yeah, probably has. And that's it. That's it for this week. That was quite good. There's some good games there. There's a couple of interesting games. Ones are not heard of, but also some utter crap.
Oh, God,
yeah. Really bad.
Yeah. GunSmoke. Yeah,
GunSmoke and Rockford. For me,
Yeesh.
I mean, I'll let Thingy go because it was just some weird amalgamation of demo code, that UCM. But I'll give it some whatever. But Rockford is a nightmare, and and the ATF was misguided, like I said. There we go. I don't think we've got anything much to add. I can tell you what we've got coming up next week. So what we've got coming up next week?
I think you should.
Next week we've got the cover game. So we've got Pac-Land. Yep, that one. We've got Tanium. Do you know what Tanium is, by the way?
No.
The follow-up to Warhawk.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Didn't get the score though, did it?
No, it didn't. We've got Wolfman, which is the our final foray into, I wait up this tree. I wonder how much waiting will be in that.
God, loads. Your face gets hairier.
Your hands elongate. What do you wish to do now? Wait. Your feet elongate. What do you wish to do? Wait.
Your teeth elongate.
What do you wish to do? Howl.
Your Schwanstucker's elongated.
Oh, you must have an enormous one.
Oh, the agony.
Oh, the pain. The pain. These trifling bears, these trifling wolfmen climbing up trees after me. Then we've got Corporation, which I seem to remember, but it's some weird one from Activision.
Good music.
Yeah. Halls of the Things, which looks got good. Doesn't look that much, but I seem to remember very good things about that. It's supposed to be quite good. Championship Sprint, which could be bad.
It doesn't sound good.
Top Fuel Challenge.
Stupid, and it sounded crap. That
it's a drag racing game.
Oh no!
And finally, the ill-named Prowler.
God's sake!
Which is some 3D blaster from what I saw of it. Budget 3D blaster, but anyway, we'll see. But it's a bad name. No one wants to call anything Prowler.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
That sounds like a dodgy Clint Eastwood movie from the 80s. Or the bad guy in a dodgy 80s Clint Eastwood movie. I'm here to find the Prowler. I fired 6 shots. I don't care if he breaks in and does things to women. I'm going to find him and kill him. It's the Prowler.
It's the Prowler. The killer called the Prowler. Yeah, it is a Dirty Harry movie, isn't it? That.
Yeah, it really is. So anyway, that's what we've got. So that's it. We've said our stuff at the beginning. So I don't think we've got anything else to add. Have you got anything you wish to say, Graham?
No, I don't. That's another fine collection. Let's see what the next one brings.
It is. Do you realise, by the way, I did want to mention this. This is the start of our 4th year of magazine. I meant to mention this last week.
Of course it is, actually, yeah, technically,
Issue 37. We've done 36. We've covered 36 magazines, so that's 3 years worth of magazines we've done.
Yep.
3 years worth of games.
It started in the May, didn't it? So
yeah. So this is the start of the 4th year of coverage.
Ooh.
In May '88. I meant to mention it last week, but I forgot. I forget a lot of things these days.
Here we go. That's a big stack of magazines in the corner.
It really is. A lot of games to be played, but more to come. And so, yes, so we'll be back next week with that lot. And so we won't say anything more here. I think we'll just get out of it. As ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
I have been Graham Raddings.
And you have been listening to Zapped to the Past. And we will see you again next week, where we will be prowling around your ears.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zap to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zapptothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zapptothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapTother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zap to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zap to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings, and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zap to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.